Anthony let out a tired sigh as his fingers danced across the keyboard. The last line of code compiled, the screen flashed green, and he finally dared to glance at the corner of the monitor. "It's getting late," he muttered. He shut the computer down, slung his worn-out bag over his shoulder, and left the tiny office. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as he walked down the stairs, each step echoing his thoughts back at him. His name was Anthony, orphan, part-time worker, full-time survivor. He juggled every odd job he could find just to pay his school fees. Thanks to his absurdly good memory, he never failed a class. Years of grinding, sacrifice, and sleepless nights had finally put him here, in a low-paying job at a small no-name company. All that effort for this. No friends, no family, just a cramped rented room, a cheap phone, and an internet connection. So he took refuge in novels and anime, living other people's adventures when his own life refused to move. He cursed his luck under his breath as he stepped out into the night air and walked toward the road. What should I read today? He wondered, waiting for a cab. Continue that Cultivation novel? Maybe that apocalypse one. His thoughts never finished. A blaring horn ripped through the air. Headlights. A truck came roaring around the corner, engine screaming as it hurtled straight at him. His body froze. Fear rooted him to the spot. He wanted to move, but his legs refused to obey. You gotta be kidding me. Did the gods actually send Truck-Cohen after me because I cursed them? He thought bitterly. There was a deafening impact. Pain exploded through his body. Then nothing. His blood pooled on the asphalt as his consciousness slipped away. His soul drifted. No body, no weight. Just a faint sense of Anthony wandering through a boundless, starless void. Oh, a golden soul with such intensity. I haven't seen one like this before. A voice mused. Something tugged at him, an invisible force dragging his soul toward the source of the voice. An unfathomable presence examined him, and its gaze flashed white as it looked through his entire life. In an instant, his soul reshaped itself, forming a transparent version of his human body. Anthony blinked, suddenly aware again. "Where am I?" he muttered. "I thought I died. Is this heaven? Isn't Truck-Cohen supposed to reincarnate me after hitting me? TSK, TSK. I better not see those authors in heaven." "Calm your thoughts, mortal. This is not heaven," the voice said. Anthony looked up. A humanoid silhouette floated before him, made entirely of swirling, ethereal darkness. No face, no eyes, no mouth, yet somehow more terrifying than anything he'd ever seen. The devil. Anthony thought, cold sweat he didn't even have running down his imaginary back. "I'm not a devil or a god. Mortal. Don't compare me to those ants," the being replied. Anthony's fear spiked. There was nowhere to run. He was already dead. "Who are you, sir? Where's this? How did I end up here?" he asked carefully. "My name is," the being said, the sound twisting reality itself. Then it paused. My mistake. You are far too weak to hear my true name without being erased. I brought you here when I noticed your golden soul." "Golden soul?" Anthony echoed. "Don't sweat the details," the being said lazily. "That's still my soul you're talking about. How am I not supposed to sweat the details?" Anthony thought, even if I explained the concept of souls, let alone a golden one, you wouldn't understand. Even your so-called devils and gods haven't grasped 0.1% of it. "You can read my mind?" Anthony asked. "Of course. Have you forgotten who I am?" "You haven't actually said who you are," Anthony shot back. "That's only because you're too weak to hear my name properly," the being replied. "Mortals call me many things. The consciousness of the universe, the core of reality, the truth holder. The list is long. They're all wrong, of course. I am nothingness. I existed before time, before beginnings." Anthony's mind blanked. How was he supposed to process that? "So, you're the consciousness of the universe?" he tried. "I am not," it answered calmly. "That is just a label given by those who cannot comprehend. And there's not just one universe, Anthony. There are infinite universes, parallel worlds, countless dimensions. All those things you read in your little web novels, they exist." Anthony could only stare, speechless, as scene after scene from various novels flashed through his mind. The being let him spiral for a while, amused before he finally asked, "So, why did you bring me here?" "No particular reason," the being replied. "I was simply curious when I saw such a bright golden soul. Are bright souls rare? With infinite universes and dimensions, how could they be rare?" it said. "But your intensity is the highest I've seen since the birth of the first universe. Normally, I just glance at golden souls and move on." Anthony suddenly felt like a toy that had been picked up and examined on a whim. He couldn't help worrying that he'd be tossed straight into hell for never going to church. The being felt his thoughts and emotions and chuckled softly. "Do you want to reincarnate?" it asked. Anthony didn't hesitate. "Yes," he answered, afraid the offer would vanish if he took even a second too long. "Well then, where do you want to reincarnate?" Anthony fell into deep thought. Every novel he'd ever read flashed before his eyes. After a long silence, he finally said, "I want a world with magic and martial arts. Dragons, phoenixes, titans, fairies, elves, all those mystical creatures I've read about." His eyes shone with excitement as he spoke. The being sighed, as if it had expected that answer. "Fine, I agree. Now, let's talk about your talent or perks." The moment those words left its mouth, Anthony's mind went into overdrive again. "I want talent with the sword, with magic, with systems." He started listing ability after ability. Passive skills, bloodlines, unique physiques, absurd cheat abilities. He just kept going. The being felt an impending headache. If something like it could get a headache, "That's enough," it interrupted. "I'm surprised you didn't ask for a leveling system like your favorite character from Solo Leveling." Anthony shook his head. "No, I don't want a standard level-up system. It might be easy at first, but in the long run, I'd be stuck hunting stronger and stronger enemies just to grow. That basically means either stagnating or turning every powerful race into my enemy, just so I can farm experience. That's too troublesome." The being actually smiled. "Very well. Think of all the talents, abilities, and systems you want. Don't bother with small things like fireball as a skill. Just think of the elements themselves. Once you learn magic, you'll be able to use the spells anyway. I'll give you 5 minutes. Everything you manage to clearly think of in those 5 minutes, I'll grant with some limits. No true immortality, no jumping straight to my level with a single thought, and nothing that breaks the fundamental balance of existence." A timer appeared in the void and started counting down. Anthony took a deep breath he technically didn't need and focused harder than he'd ever focused in his life. His mind raced through every story he'd read, every power he'd envied, every system and cheat he'd ever bookmarked. Sword talent, elemental affinity, passive regeneration, combined systems, unique physique, conceptual resistance, luck boosts, hidden evolutions. On and on he went, stuffing every possible advantage into those 5 minutes. When the timer hit 0, his thoughts cut off as if someone had flipped a switch. "Time's up," the being said. "Since you've made your choices, it's time to send you off. Any last words?" Anthony hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Thanks." The being's aura softened just a little. "Off you go." With a single word, the void around Anthony shattered, and his soul vanished, shooting toward a brand new world. In a tower so vast it could be mistaken for a castle, a woman lay in the throes of childbirth. Midwives moved around her in a practiced rush, urging her to keep pushing. Far above the city, a dazzling golden soul descended into this world and streaked straight toward that very building. With one final cry, the woman gave birth. Her breathing slowed as she turned her head, eyes softening when she saw the child she had carried for 9 months. "It's a boy," one of the midwives announced, holding the newborn carefully. "Let me hold my son," the woman said. They placed the baby in her arms. As she cradled him, emotions flooded her all at once. Relief, joy, exhaustion, and a fierce, blooming love. At that exact moment, the golden soul slipped silently into the room. Unseen by anyone, it merged with the newborn's body. The baby burst into loud cries. The mother only smiled, mistaking it for his first reaction to the world. She noticed his hair and laughed softly. "He has his father's hair," she murmured. With a wave of her hand, she cast a simple cleaning spell, washing away blood and amniotic fluid. Once he was clean and wrapped, she kissed his forehead. "Your name will be Anthony. Null Anthony, first son and first child of the Null family." Still smiling, she laid him beside her and drifted into an exhausted sleep, the newborn dozing at her side. Anthony woke up the next morning in his new life. He could barely move his head, but he could see enough. He lay in an ornate cradle, its edges carved with intricate patterns. The walls of the room were decorated with expensive ornaments that practically screamed wealth. "I'm not an orphan this time," he thought happily. Jackpot! Visions of future adventures filled his mind. Dragons to slay, phoenixes to befriend, titans to fight. His fantasy was cut short by a sudden, awful realization. He smelled something. He had soiled himself. This couldn't get more embarrassing. "I'm supposed to slay dragons, but I can't even control my own bowels," he thought bitterly, and began to cry on instinct. A maid rushed in moments later, quickly changing his diapers. And so his days fell into the routine of all babies: eating, sleeping, crying, and pooping. Time passed. By the time Anthony was 5 years old, he had long since accepted his tiny body and noble background. He spent most of his free moments trying to draw mana into his body, attempting to cultivate the way protagonists always did in the novels he remembered. He failed, miserably. Every attempt left him frustrated and angry. Convinced something was wrong with him, he buried himself in books the moment he learned how to read. He haunted the family library, searching for why he couldn't absorb mana. Did that being scam me? He wondered. Did it give me a broken body? He almost cried from humiliation and rage until he finally found the answer. Humans in this world could not use mana until they awakened at the age of 10. When he realized that, he nearly jumped for joy. Nothing was wrong with him at all. He thanked the Nameless being silently and dove even deeper into his studies. From the books, Anthony learned that this world was called Blue Planet. Mana had existed here since the world's formation, though no one knew exactly how long that had been. Blue Planet was said to be over 200 times the size of Earth, though he suspected that was just an approximation. The world was divided between races and domains, each major race ruling its own territory. They coexisted in what the books politely called peace. Anthony snorted at that. It was less peace and more mutual tolerance. The only reason everyone wasn't in constant large-scale war was because of a common enemy: the demons. According to history, demons had invaded Blue Planet 7 million years ago. They were endless, relentless, and voracious. They killed anything living, devoured entire ecosystems, and even tried to consume planetary cores. Rumor said they were invading worlds across the universe, a race born for destruction whose true motives no one understood. The main races of Blue Planet were dragons, said to be unrivaled in magic; phoenixes, constantly contending with dragons for magical supremacy in a rivalry no one officially acknowledged; titans, unmatched in brute strength and raw power; elves, rulers of wind and spirit magic; dwarves, peerless blacksmiths and craftsmen, yet still hardened warriors; humans called the jacks of all trades, competent at everything, masters of few, but never to be underestimated; demi-humans such as foxkin, catkin, werewolves, and others, grouped into a joint domain; vampires, feared as the dominators of blood. There were many other minor races as well, but they were too weak or too few to claim a domain alone. They either clustered near larger domains or lived scattered within them. Anthony also learned about his own family. His mother, who had named him, was Mitchell Crimson of the prestigious Crimson family. She had married Null Michael, Anthony's father, whom Anthony had never actually seen. Whenever he asked, his mother would simply say, "He'll be back in a few years," so eventually he stopped pressing and chose to wait. Humans in this world awakened their class at the age of 10. Their class came with perks, sometimes accompanied by a special physique or bloodline. That part surprised Anthony the most. In many novels, only chosen characters had such advantages. Here, it was a recognized phenomenon. He had wanted to start sword training early, but his mother had firmly refused, telling him he might awaken as something like a mechanic instead, which gave him actual nightmares. Reluctantly, he gave up and decided to wait for his awakening. Talent, he discovered, was something everyone tried to measure, but with no success. Because of that, those who awakened with bloodlines or physiques were highly sought after. Even those without them could rise to prominence if their class and perks were strong enough. Of course, people rarely reveal their perks. That kind of information could be fatal in the wrong hands. Anthony also learned that he had grandparents, but they were always away, dealing with demons and beasts near the borders. They were supposed to return a week before his 10th birthday. The Null family itself turned out to be one of the 6 strongest families in the human domain, alongside the Crimson family, the Amos family, the Stellar family, the Lionheart family, the Landell family. Together with the Nulls, these 6 were considered the human domain's top powerhouses. Anthony couldn't help the headache that formed whenever he imagined the cliché, arrogant young masters that would inevitably come from such families. If any of them try to mess with me, I'll just beat them down and kill them when no one's looking, he thought calmly. If anyone suspects me, that's what having a powerhouse family is for. Let's see who dares accuse me with evidence they don't have. He had no intention of leaving proof behind for anyone. Another thing that surprised him was the technology. He had assumed a world with mana would lag behind Earth, but Blue Planet was technologically advanced as well. There were cars, yachts, phones, laptops, even Western-style toilets. He didn't have to bump around in horse-drawn carriages on stone roads. He silently gave the nameless being another thumbs up, truly worthy of a being even gods can't compare to. He spent his days waiting for his 10th birthday, reading constantly and brushing up on history. At the same time, he kept wondering about the cheats he'd chosen before reincarnating. Why hadn't he received a single system notification despite trying for 5 years? Many times, he felt the urge to curse the being for scamming him, but he always stopped himself. He still remembered how he'd cursed God in his previous life after work and then died minutes later under a truck. He wasn't eager to repeat that mistake, especially when this entity was ranked far above God's. The more he thought about it, the more depressed he became. If he could have, he would have gone to sleep and only woken up on the day of his awakening ceremony. Instead, he killed time reading in the library and gossiping with the maids. Whenever he got bored, he made the butler drive him out in a different car. The Null family owned several luxurious vehicles, and in his past life, he hadn't been able to get within sniffing distance of one. Now that he could, he intended to enjoy them all before serious training began at age 10. From his mother, he learned that she herself held the Elemental Magician class, which granted her access to multiple elements and several powerful perks. When he asked for details, she merely laughed and told him he was still too young to understand. He could only sigh, swallow his curiosity, and wait patiently for the day his own awakening would finally come.
Hey everyone, Firescale Audiobooks here. If there's a novel you'd love to hear more of, you can support us on Patreon or Ko-fi. Depending on your tier, I'll make extra parts just for the stories you're most excited about. Usually I can only upload 4 to 5 parts of each novel, but with your support, we can go beyond that. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe. It helps more than you know.
It was morning, and the birds at Anthony's window were chirping. He woke up from his deep sleep, shooting an angry look at the birds. He yawned and jumped of his bed. He stood at the mirror looking at his perfectly handsome face that would even make the Dragon King kidnap him for experiment cause he was too handsome. His perfectly arranged white hair, his deep blue eyes which shined as if they were a combination of the blue sea, blue sky, and blue gem. Anybody that stared into his eyes would be entrapped by his charms. He stood there for a while admiring himself, thinking how far he has come. He's going to be 10 in a week, and his father would be arriving today with his grandparents. He proceeded to the bathroom to bath. He spent the last 5 years training his body since he wasn't allowed to train with a weapon, so he did exercise every day and practice hand-to-hand combat every day with the Garda Maid. Don't let the word maid fool you. All of them are elite in their right. During these 5 years, he found the power rank in this world goes from F to SSS+. each further divided into 3 minor ranks like F-F, F+. The ranks were F, E, D, C, bis, SS. There were still ranks above these, but his mother said he would know them after he awakened, and when the time was right, he didn't ask anymore and just gave up. The guard in the house were walking nukes, some at SSS+, some above. Even the maids were at least A+, which made Anthony confused, as SSS rank was always the pinnacle in his novel, but he didn't care much. The more people advance in rank, the higher their lifespan, and the harder it is to give birth. His mother looked like she was in her early 20s, but she was already over 100 years old and chilling at a rank she refused to say that was above SSS rank. As he was thinking of this, he came out of the shower, cleaning himself with a towel, and looked down at his big brother, encouraging him to grow so they would give birth to a powerful child. Then he raised his head, and his eyes fell on the mirror, and he started admiring himself again. The six-pack were neatly arranged, the biceps, the quads, not like the one he had from his first life that came from suffering and night shift, making him looking forward to the awakening even more. He started dressing when he heard his mother's voice that always made him confused if she was a fairy, 'cause she sounded so enchanting. "Anthony, come down, your father is here," she said. He immediately left the room and stood at the front door of the huge castle as the cars drove into their estate. The cars lined up, the guards immediately highlighted from the car, each releasing massive aura. They went to open the doors to 2 cars, and 2 men and a woman came down. Anthony looked at these people and their aura and felt the guards at the door were simply too weak. He looked at the 2 men, each looking like they are in the 20s, but were indeed old, both having white hair like him, but with different eyes. He got his blue eyes from his mother. He looks at the woman who seems to be his grandmother with blazing red hair, but contrary to her hair, she awakened as a healer. She also looked like she was in her 20s. The class the grandmother awakened was the Everlasting One, which granted her many perks and made her god on the battlefield. Named Saintess of the World, her name Irene Crimson. People even rumored she could bring back the dead, but what was sure was that, as long you are still breathing, she can heal you. He looked at his grandfather, named Lightning God. On the field, he awakened the class Lightning Mage. He fried his enemies just by looking at them. His name Noel Collins. It is said there is always a force field made of lightning around him. When unauthorized things or people get within range, they immediately get attacked irrespective of who they are. This reminded Anthony of a certain character in his anime. Then he looked at the last person, his father, named Null Michael, who awakened the swordsman class. People fear his sword because it was said he could cut through space and time. He was called the Sword Saint on the battlefield. Anthony knew all this information from his mother, guards, and maids. He had gathered them after gossiping with them. He didn't know what to say at this overpowered family where each of them were walking calamities. Even the guards that came down from the car gave off oppressive aura. In Anthony's mind, if his family were like this, how about the remaining 5? This meant there were 5 family on par or close to the level of these monsters. He sighed and reverted back to his normal cute 10-year-old self and greeted everyone. His mother hugged his father, and they did their things while he went to act cute with his grandparents so they could spoil him. They talked over dinner and asked how he has been without them. Anthony's answer were standard. Then Michael asked, "So what class do you want to awaken, my dear son?" Everyone looked at him, waiting for an answer. He saw their eyes full of expectations, knowing that in a family of monsters he couldn't do less. Not that he ever thought of doing less, he even thought of doing more. He smiled cutely and said, "I want to awaken and be a magician like mother or a swordsman like father. In fact, I want to awaken them both. I want to be a magic swordsman. We would fight together on the battlefield." Everyone laughed at their little baby. Then the grandfather asked, "Then how is your sword training coming along?" Anthony choked and coughed. He replied, I haven't trained," and the sword mother said if I trained I would awaken as a mechanic, so I only train the body. Everyone immediately started laughing, as if they inhaled laughing gas. Anthony just sat there looking at these monsters who were feared in the world, laughing at him. After throwing some jabs at him, everyone left to their rooms, and like this they spent time with each other every day, and 6 days passed in a blink of an eye. Anthony returned to his room and closed his eyes to sleep, so he could wake up early the next day for the awakening, which was his birthday. But his consciousness was drawn somewhere else. He was shocked when he saw his consciousness appear in a dark place. He remembered when he died and how his soul wondered. He cursed, wondering if he died a night to his awakening, thinking of all things he endured. As he wanted to cry, the being voice sounded in his head. "You are thinking useless things again, mortal." He turned and saw the being. He was overjoyed, but before he could speak, he was stopped by the being. "Speak first. I'm not here to speak with you. You might add another wish to your list. I'm just here to activate your system and cheat. The system has always been with you, but I made it dormant. So you would suffer without seeing your cheat for some time. It was nice seeing you suffer and panicking from not being able to draw mana. That was an interesting show. Well, this is goodbye, mortal. We won't be seeing again unless you get to my level, or at least a level below me, or well, unless I decide to see you on." A whim. With that, the being vanished like he was never there. Some hours after the being vanished, Anthony woke up. He looked at the time and saw it was still 6:03 a.m. The awakening was going to hold by 10 a.m. He remembered what the being said, only being able to meet when he reaches at least a level lower than it. Anthony ruled out any naive thoughts of reaching it. Then excitedly, he said in his mind, "System. Acknowledging host. Systems are binding. Please wait an hour." Anthony smiled. He had wished for different kind of system within that 5 minutes that was given, cause there was no way he would remember all abilities. So he used 3 minutes time to make systems and functions, and the remaining 2 minutes for abilities and talent he could remember or made up on the spot. He knew the being might be so precise and decide not to adjust the system. He had read novels like these, where beings would just grant you your exact wish without fine-tuning it, simply because your wish was too outrageous. The systems were infinite resource system, where the system would give him infinite resource, be it health potion, stamina potions, money, mana core, anything, cultivation manual, skill book, but he would always be limited to a certain spending value per month. That was the limit placed on the system by the being. If not, he would literally own the world already. But as he grows stronger, the limit increase, meaning he could just take out Excalibur if he wanted, but not now, all without a cost. He could form his own army and collect talent in chancing pills and feed it to them, and they would be talented. This was basically a shop, but without paying for anything. The second one was sign-in system. He can sign in daily to receive random rewards that must be on at least divine rank. He specifically said that 70% of reward should be abilities and remaining 30% are on items, artifact, and miscellaneous stuff. He also demanded infinite space to store anything, even if they are items not gotten from the system. Then the system must come with AI that can answer some of his questions if he has any. These are the systems for now. As for the skills, they would only be active when he awakens. Anthony was on his bed, waiting patiently for his systems to boot. By 7:05 a.m., the system beeped. Systems are now bound together as one. Beginning binding to the host. 1%, 18%, 45%, 67%, 75%, 94%, 100%. Ding. Binding is complete. Host, please name the system. As the system is a combination of various systems, it has no name. Anthony thought for a while. Then he decided, since he was from an OP family and was going to be OP, why not name it? "I will name the system OP System," he said. Ding. Name registered. Ding. OP System at your service, master. Anthony smiled like a child who just saw the tooth fairy taking his tooth out from under his pillow. He wanted to scream. He wanted to shout, but he remained steady as a man. System display menu. Ding. Host, null, Anthony. Age, 10 years old. Race, human. Class, unawakened. Physiques, unawakened. Bloodline, unawakened. Talent, cursed. Skills, unawakened. Affinities, unawakened. Ding. Host has to awaken to unlock his abilities. Anthony was happy when he saw all this. He gladly read through them, feeling he might be able to reach that being level at this rate. But his fantasy was shattered when his eyes fell on talent section. He nearly screamed out on top of his lungs. But he screamed in his mind, "What the fuck? I'm freaking cursed. Is the being playing with me after what he said about me suffering? No, it's not him who cursed me, a rival family. Damn it. What's the use of a system if you're cursed? Would I disappoint my family today?" He became nervous, his heart beating rapidly. Then his eyes flashed when he remembered something. Yes, the infinite resource system can give anything. it can remove the curse. System: who cursed me? How am I cursed? What type of curse is it? The host has been cursed with the talent blockage curse. It's an ancient curse which blocked the talent of any being before awakening. As for who cursed the host would have to find out himself. Anthony was going crazy. 10 years of endurance just to be cursed? Never. System: what item in the resource system can be used to remove the curse immediately? Host: there are many items to remove the curse, but the host can't get it now, since the host has yet to increase his spending limit, which increases in correspondence to his strength. The host would have to get to S+ in order to have the value for it, due to the curse being an ancient curse. Fuck. He nearly went mad. His mind went blank as he stared at the ceiling, not knowing what to do. He remembered asking the being for limitless talent in anything he does, but now all that for naught. The clock kept ticking till it hit 9:30 a.m. when he was called out of his room to go to the awakening chamber. He walked to his family members. He was nervous. He didn't know what to say or do. He remembered the expectant eyes he saw last week. When his family saw him being nervous, they smiled, not knowing anything, thinking he was just nervous from awakening. They entered the chamber at 10 a.m. sharp. Irene, his grandmother, brought out an awakening stone and said, "Place your hand on the stone and channel the mana through you from the stone, and you will awaken," she said as she stepped back. Anthony stepped forward after hesitating, resigning to his fate. He places his hand on the stone. The stone glowed pure blue light, which signified his awakening has started, and mana flowed into his body after a while. The system notification sounded. Ding! The host has awakened. The host has awakened the Magic Swordsman class. The system determines host is cursed. By authority of? The curse is lifted. Backlash is sent to the caster. Host has awakened the primordial bloodline. Host has awakened the beginning of all things physique. Host has awakened his mana and affinities. Anthony was in a daze as he read the system notification with a sad face. When he saw the Magic Swordsman talent, he became happy immediately. Then he remembered his curse. His happiness was snuffed out with a pillow immediately. He read and got to the talent part, and he screamed inwardly. He wanted to shout to the world, he is the most talented. His family saw him being in a daze, then called out to him. He came back to his senses and looked at them with a smile. His mother asked, "What class did you awaken?" "Magic Swordsman," he replied. The entire family smiled and congratulated him. "I knew my son could do it," his father said. "Humph, you weren't here for 10 years. His my son, not yours," the mother countered. They argued whose son he was. After the congratulations, I retired to my room for the day. Immediately, I opened the system and read all notifications again, just to be sure. System: why didn't you say you could remove the curse? Host said to leave it so you know you are cursed and suffer. He said he enjoyed your emotional turmoil prior to your awakening. Anthony didn't know if the being was really nothingness or from the devil race. But he smiled nonetheless. At least nothing went wrong. He called out in his mind to see the skills he had wished for. System: host, null Anthony. Age, 10 years old. Race, human. Rank, F-. Class, Magic Swordsman. Physiques, the beginning of all things. Bloodline, primordial bloodline. Talent, limitless. Skills, loading. Affinities, fire, water, wind, earth, wood, lightning, light, darkness, space-time, metal, ice. His eyes were glowing. "It's here," he kept screaming in his head. System: why are my skills still loading? Has placed a restriction on the skills of the host. As host becomes stronger, he would unlock them. Host is only able to access some skills at the moment. Anthony wanted to curse that cunning being. Ding! By the authority of? You have granted an authority as a compensation for toying with you twice. Ding! Skill loaded. Skills. Passive. Experience of all swordmaster you know. Passive. Experience of all magician and alike that you know. Passive. Mana eyes. You can see the flow and direction of mana no matter how minute it is. Passive. Infinite mana. Your mana is inexhaustible. Passive. Infinity. All physical and magical elements that come within 5 meters of you will automatically be stopped from getting any close. Range can be increased to 1 kilometers. Range increases as the host mana rank increases. Anthony laughed. Although he didn't get all his skills, these ones were extremely important. The first two practically made him a master in both sword and magic, but he has to practice as he only has the experience and not the feeling, and his body won't move accordingly. So he has to still train, but this shortens his workload till he surpasses the sword masters and magician he knew. This was his cheat to improve faster. Infinite mana made him the best magician out there, though infinite mana contradicts the way of mana cultivation, in which people increase the amounts of mana that can be stored in their way, but found a way around it. Mana eyes allowed him to see everything with mana, no matter how small. Infinity was basically stolen from Gojo, but he didn't care. The best part is all skills get stronger with him. No one stayed behind. He made sure to add that to his list. He laughed at how smart he is. System, what is the authority? Ding. Authority of information. You are privileged to all information about your world and some hidden and unknown, but your rank limits how much you can actually see. Skill. Grants the user omniscience, limited by cultivation rank. He nearly went mad from this authority. He practically knew anything. The only holding him back was his strength. He bowed to the being. To be able to have this authority was already more important than all his skills. With this authority, he can take treasures, know hidden location, spy on meeting, know who signed a deal to the demons, but at last, he was too weak. He loved the compensation, but he couldn't help but think of himself as an actor who had the lead role but didn't even know it. Only to be paid later for his work, he didn't know what to say about it. But who cares? He's rich in information now. System, give explanation for the physique and bloodline. Primordial bloodline grants the highest affinity possible to all elements. Grants ability to expertly control all element as if you are their progenitor. Grants inheritance directly to the possessor knowledge about magic at its highest order with all element and mana. Mana cost for casting elemental-related magic reduced by 90%. Grants eidetic memory, photographic memory, hyperthymesia, accelerated thinking speed, 1 million thinking compartment, divine intelligence. Anthony cursed. This directly offsets my second passive skill, but it doesn't matter. I can directly combine the second passive skill to the bloodline knowledge instead of letting it rot, Anthony thought in his mind, but it came with a lot of benefit. He could think and analyze 1 million things at the same time. Beginning of all things physique. This physique was born out of the imagination of the host. Second only to the physique possessed by, host is too weak to use the physique fully, and is advised to become strong to activate all its uses, passive skills granted. Enhanced strength, enhanced speed, enhanced regeneration, enhanced stamina, immortal handsomeness, a fraction of knowledge about the hidden knowledge of the unknown. These factors will increase in accordance with the host rank. Grants the trait weapons master. The host is blessed with knowledge on all weapons together with skills and techniques that follows. Grants the trait mana master. Mana would bend according to the host will. Host, these are just a fraction of what the physique and bloodline can do. Even the knowledge and skills and techniques provided doesn't amount to 1% of its totaling. Its advised host immediately increases his rank to extract more knowledge and perks granted by them. Anthony gasped. He didn't know what to say. He thought for a while and put the physique out of his mind. At least the passive skill will follow me forever, Anthony thought. He then sat in a lotus position, closed his eyes, and accepted the experience and knowledge of the swords and magic from his passive skill and separated them into the 1 million space which he spent 7 hours digesting. His divine intelligence, photographic memory, and all of them came into play to digest the information, but it still took 7 hours. He opened his eyes and sighed at the immense knowledge he received. He felt like standing up and grabbing a sword to start swinging. His other half felt like casting a spell immediately. Both have fighting who goes first. He shakes his head and calms down. He looks at the clock. It was already 6 p.m., so he decided to accept the bloodline inheritance knowledge and physique knowledge of the unknown. The moment he did, his brain nearly exploded. He released it all to the 1 million compartment, which slowed things down, but still wasn't enough. He had no choice but to think of 2 things at the same time in the same compart. Thanks to divine intelligence, which brought in parallel thinking. turning 1 million to 2 million compartment. The bloodline and physique both provided knowledge on magic and mana, but he didn't care. He would go through it all. There was no way there would be overlapping knowledge. When he woke up from his slumber, he stretched, then checked the time, and he was shocked. It was 2 p.m. the next day. He didn't sleep at all, but due to his physique and bloodline, he still felt fit and was not tired. His eyes fell on the table in his room where a paper was. It read, "It seems my son is already working hard after just awakening. Come downstairs when you are done. Love, Mom." He looked at the note. He didn't even know when she entered. It seems he was deep in absorbing the knowledge. Though he has absorbed the knowledge, he hasn't read through them all or mastered them. They're only saved to his brain like a file for now. The physique giving him the weapon master and skills and techniques cancels out his passive experience of all sword master, just like how his bloodline did, but it didn't matter. He would combine all of them. He took a bath and started wearing his clothes. He looked at the mirror to admire himself. Just to be shocked, he saw that he was extremely handsome now due to the blessing of the physique. His previous face, that was already so handsome, was no different than the ugliest face he has ever seen compared to his current face and body. He sighed, thinking the demons would definitely side with the dragon to kidnap him. There was no going back now. He went downstairs to greet his family members. Immediately, they stopped in their tracks, wondering which immortal descended from another world. Anthony saw their shocked faces and smiled. He started planning how to intercept all harem members of the main character of this world. How dare the main character of this world have a harem while he isn't as handsome as him? He called out to his family to snap out of their daze as he walked towards them. His mother asked, "Son, did you bath in the universe river? How can you be so handsome?" He smiled and replied, "Mom, it's just the physique I awakened. It made me more handsome, so you might have grandchildren tomorrow at this rate." Everybody laughed at his joke. Then the grandmother said, "Tell us about your awakening." "I awakened the Overlord physique, which grants me overlord to the elements and swords. It passively enhances all physical attributes the more I train and higher rank I achieve. Increases handsomeness. Increases training in sword, magic, and cultivation by 500%. It also amplifies spells I cast by 300%, amplifies sword skills and techniques by 300%. He lied, but he couldn't just tell them about his bloodline and physique outright. When he listed these, everyone became speechless. They didn't know what to say. This was a little monster who just awakened. Then lights flashed their eyes. They wanted to see him grow and be on the battlefield. But they had to protect him till he grows. He has never seen the outside world, so he doesn't know its horror. Killing intent leaked from Michael's body as he thought of those family and cult that might harm his precious son. Little did Michael know that his little precious son knows the horror of the world and was already making plans for it. Though he never interacted with other people outside his houses, he knows the horror of the world. Even when the butler drove him around when he was 5 years, he only looked from inside the car and never came out to greet anybody. Rumors spread that the son of the sword saint and mage of destruction, his mother's title, was sick and had little to no intelligence. He knew about these rumors from a maid and guards when gossiping with them, but told them not to bother correcting them. His grandfather said, "Let's go pick your cultivation technique, shall we?" He smiled as everyone followed along. They went into THR library, and his grandeur activated a hidden door which led to the basement. Anthony has never been here before, so he was excited. They walked down the stairs and arrived in front of a portal. Anthony was shocked. Is this a dungeon? He had already read about dungeons in this world. His mother's words, sounding of fairies, entered his ears. This portal leads to a secret realm. Here all our main family knowledge are kept. Skills, techniques, hidden knowledge, forbidden spells. Everything related to any profession is here. Even blacksmithing or alchemy. They are all here. He was truly shocked to the core. How much power do you have to possess knowledge to all profession, and even stored it in a secret realm? It seems he's been looking down on his family. They walked through the portal. He felt dizzy as he passed through. It was his first time moving through space, but the feeling only lasts less than a second because of this affinity's bloodline and physique. His family were shocked to see him regain composure so fast, expecting him to vomit or be dizzy for a while, but it seems their baby is more freakish than he lets on. They didn't speak on it and just looked at each other and smiled. Anthony raised his head. and saw rolls and rolls of shelves. It seems endless. They walked as he admired, and he was lost in its beauty. Then realization struck him. He hasn't signed in for today, and that being his first time, he immediately said, "System sign in." Ding! Host has signed in. As it's the host's first time of signing in, the host would be given 2 rewards. Congratulations to the host for winning a realm. Divine Realm. A realm created by? In its boredom, which he decided to gift to you since you are signing in from a realm. Privilege to the realm. 1. Mana in the Divine Realm is in its purest form called the primordial mana, which has been dormant since the inception. 2. Time dilation can be adjusted to be slower here, with 1:100 being its highest. The host can adjust according to his wishes. 3. Only those who are absolutely loyal to the host can enter this realm with the host. 4. Aging only occurs in the real-world time and not realm time. It is advised host trains and cultivates in this realm in order to have higher mana quality than others. Congratulations to the host for winning the cultivation technique created by. For the host. The cultivation technique was created by. For the host, since the host possessed different physique and bloodline. The host is required to name this cultivation technique and other to use it. Anthony thought for a second and named it Nothingness Cultivation Technique. Host has named the technique. Rank of Nothingness Cultivation Technique. Unknown. Anthony was so happy he wanted to bow to the being, but he couldn't since they were walking in the secret realm now. He was happy and smiling. His family saw his happy mood and thought it was because he is picking a technique. They arrived at a particular shelf that glowed with a rainbow hue. The grandfather said, "Pick a cultivation technique from here." Anthony walked around the shelf for a while and picked a book named The Dawn. Those sounds and looked simple, but was far from that. Michael said, "Pick a sword technique." Anthony looked around, then said with a hard face, "Father, my physique restricts me from using others' techniques. It only allows me to walk my own path." His family were stunned for a second, but thought of the outrageous perk of his physique alone. They came to understand everything came with a cost, but they would still help in any way they can. They just smiled and didn't ask anymore. He told his mother the same things about magic too, so they won't waste their time teaching him when he has a bloodline and physique worth of knowledge. He just took the cultivation technique and left. Though he won't cultivate it, he only took it for show. As for the sword technique and magic, why waste time mastering the ones they created when he has something better? He got back to his room and said, "System, where is the realm?" Host only needs to think about entering the realm, and he would enter. Anthony nodded, then said, "System, where is the nothingness cultivation technique?" Host only needs to affirm, and the system would send it directly to the host's mind. He immediately affirmed, and a vast amount of information waved into his mind. He sat there for a good 9 hours in order to understand the technique, and that was by using his 2 million compartment. He sighed, "Would I waste time each time I accept knowledge like this? Well, the knowledge is too vast. This is real life, not those instant learning system that takes 1 click and a second to learn." He picks his phone up and texted everyone in his contact list, basically the maids and his family, and told them that he would be in seclusion for a year, which was funny that a person who just awakened and just got his cultivation technique some hours ago was entering seclusion. He made the maids prepare all the food he will need, but told them to prepare it for 5 years, which shocked them. He only told them his appetite has increased. Everyone wasn't awakened, so food of 5 years was prepared. 2 days, he stuffed it all in his storage ring, which his father gave him the day. He picked a cultivation technique, which contained a sword, all sorts of potions that would last him a year. With that, everyone sent him off, as he entered the seclusion room, which was then guarded by unknown ranked guards. In the 2 days it took to cook all dishes he signed in. Doppelganger. Host is able to create a perfect clone of himself, which is able to use all abilities, skills of the host, possess all qualities of the host. Cool down, none. The host has gained true immunity to illusions. He was very happy when he saw the first reward the other day. He was already thinking of how to fool his parents when he left for the Divine Realm. If they swept their sense and didn't sense him, they would barge in immediately. Even the guards would too. With this he was ready. He stood in the cultivation room, created the clone, which was basically his twin brother, The clone had a consciousness and possessed everything he does, even a soul, but a fragment of his. The clone sat in a lotus position and pretended to cultivate. With that, he notified the system, and he disappeared from the room. Anthony arrived in a serene plain. There were grass, trees, birds. He closed his eyes and inhales the fresh air. Then exhales. He could feel the mana, dancing and cheering at his arrival. He could feel it was the purest form of mana, the primordial mana. After looking around for a while, he sets the time dilation to 1:5, in which 5 years here was a year outside. A timer hung up in the air, showing a year worth of time. He then sat down and started cultivation. The speed at which he drew mana surprised him. He kept drawing it like a vortex. It was moving endlessly. He thanked the being for the divine realm. If not, when he cultivated outside, it would cause a ruckus. 30 minutes later, he entered F rank. An hour later, F plus rank. He stopped his cultivation and was shocked. In an hour, he got to the peak of the F rank. He couldn't believe it. He checked his foundation and saw it was perfect. His physique passively built a perfect foundation for him. All he needs to do is cultivate. He closed his eyes, steeled himself, and started cultivating at full forces. As he was cultivating, he tapped into the knowledge from his bloodline and physique and shared them amongst his 2 million compartment, though the compartment still wasn't enough to process it all. Just like that, time slowly slipped by 1.5 years passed by. He woke up from his cultivation, seeing that he had advanced to the B rank. There was system notification, but he left them for now. He would check them all when he leaves the realm. Even inside the realm, he left a thought compartment to always sign in. He can't miss those rewards. He could have advanced faster, but the higher the realm he climbed, the more absurd mana he needed to absorb to reach the next rank. Because his physique and bloodline are no different from black holes, if he cultivated outside, he might be in the D rank because the amount of mana he needs is way too outrageous. Normally after break through, he would hold over 100 times mana for someone in his rank and would also be stronger since he is using primordial mana. But this is canceled because of the passive skill. Infinite mana, but he didn't care. You might say he has infinite mana, so why train? Why not just cast the technique and skills infinitely? But can his soul and body handle such burden? Every breakthrough nourishes the physical body and the soul, which increases lifespan, so he can't just cast them anyhow. After looking at his rank, he smiled, then went into work mode again, started going through the endless knowledge. He is studying the magic part, integrating it with his body, studying every element and mana from its lowest building block, relating and applying it to his spell casting and mage way of life. But it seemed endless, but he didn't care. He couldn't just become a god out of nowhere. And like that, another 1.5 years went by. He exhaled, thinking of his previous life, how he was an orphan, worked hard, landed a job, had no friend, how he died, and how he was here with a loving family. He remembered all this. Then he stopped reminiscing after he finished eating. The only rest he gets is when he is eating and taking a bath. Besides this, no rest. After eating, he took a bath. The divine realm had no house or cottage, so he directly bought a house from the system. He came out to an open field, held his sword his father gave him, and started practicing according to the physique knowledge of swords. After some months, he switched to a saber, then to an axe, a bow, daggers, short swords, pole/rod, spear. He trained in all weapons. He didn't want to train them initially, but he felt it was a waste if it accumulated dust. So he trained each weapon at months' interval, revised the knowledge of the weapons as he trained in his thoughts compartment. It went on, and 1.5 years was gone. He only had half a year remaining here. He used it to go through his knowledge again, the ones he didn't touch before he went through them. But it all seemed endless, but he didn't complain. Due to his memory, he remembered it all and embedded it all in his way of life. Half a year went by, and he opened his eyes. He was already a plus rank. As he reviewed his knowledge, he cultivated so he won't waste his time. He stood up and glanced upwards and then bowed to the being, who he didn't know if it was watching. After the bow, he said, "It's time to leave." He went into his room from the basement of the house he bought from the system and came to the mirror and said, "I have become more handsome," admiring his muscles and six-packs. He stood there salivating at his body. Then he changed clothes to the one he wore before coming to the realm. He looked at one of the skills he awakened after he advanced in rank, since the being placed restrictions on some skills. But it didn't matter since he didn't wish for much skills anyway. That was why he had the sign-in system, which gave 70% skill to make up for this shortcoming, but it all depends of luck. For all he knows, the remaining 30% might happen throughout a year, leaving the remaining 70% in the dust, but it's just a speculation. He activated the ability Concealment. Concealment. The host can hide his entire existence and anything related to him, and be like he doesn't exist in the first place, can conceal mana rank and change it to what the host wants to display. The mana rank is another name for power rank, for those that are confused. Immediately, he activated it. His aura changed to that of a F rank. He then accepted another skill he unlocked. Passive, Battle Experience. Gives the host the battle experience of all weapon masters and mages he knows. All sorts of battle experience flooded his mind. It was as if he was the one that fought. His aura shifted to one of an expert. The skill was supposed to come with another skill, but it looks like the being locked the other skill. And that was supposed to be his last skill he wished for, as he spent most of his time choosing which system would help him the most. TSK. He clicked his tongue and left the house. Then he accepted 2 skill he won from the sign-in system. The all-seeing eyes. Able to see through all things, able to gaze at the past, the future, the present, falsehood, emotions, and more. The limit of the eyes can only be determined by the host and how the host uses it. The skill mana, eyes automatically has been fused into all-seeing eyes. He was happy, though. The eyes came with a lot of passive skills and active ones. It took him some minutes to adjust to them. Infinite regeneration. Host is able to regenerate immediately after he is injured. Host can regenerate his head if decapitated, his heart if squashed. Host can even regenerate from the atomic level. He was truly speechless for this skill. He was like a cockroach now. He could even use this to lure people and bring their guards down. He smiled as he thought of this. With a thought, he left the divine realm. He appeared in his seclusion room and looked at his clone, who simply slept off and couldn't help but laugh. He deactivated the skill, and the clone disappeared. Then he went straight and opened the seclusion door. The guards who were at the door guarding him greeted, "Good afternoon, young master. How was your seclusion?" They asked. "It was okay," he replied. With his all-seeing eyes, he could see more about the guards now, unlike before. He could tell they were happy. Then he looked around and found the mana pattern of his parents, then simply teleports to their door. He knocks on the door and waited for a while. Then the door opened on its own. Then he entered. "Anthony, you are back," his father said, smiling at his talented son, then frowned seeing the mana rank of his son. Before he could say anything, his wife directly appeared in front of him and asked worriedly, "Anthony, what happened? Your rank didn't improve. Are you injured?" She was truly worried. He smiled and replied, "I am fine, Mom. During my training, I comprehended a magic skills that helps me conceal my rank. That's why you can't sense it." He immediately revealed D+ rank aura and his parent side of relief. "You really are my little monster, aren't you?" the father said. He replied, "I could have gone higher, but that would damage my foundation. Also, I was practicing magic and swords, so I couldn't cultivate all the time." His father and mother were happy for their son's intelligence on balance. But suddenly the atmosphere shifted. "Since you have increased your rank, there are things you have to know, as you would soon be sent into the world," the father said with a stern face. The mother frowned too. Then he started speaking. "I'm sure you already know the existence of demons and the monsters we fight daily, so I won't be speaking on it. But I'll be talking about something else not in the library you read." "Something else?" Anthony asked. "The Forsaken Cult," his mother said. Anthony didn't know what the Forsaken Cult was, so he just listened. "They are people of different race who have sided with the demon to help bring the world down. They've been around for 2 million years now. There was some cult before them, but we always managed to uproot them. But after you wipe them out, another group appears. They're just endless like the demons," the father said. "They mainly do assassination, killing and stealing, and trying to bring down powerhouses, killing growing and budding talents, trafficking, kidnapping, enslaving children, and adding them to their ranks," the mother said. "Do you know why I'm telling you all this?" asked the father, who waited for his son's reply. Anthony thought and said, "To be careful, never trust anyone, never drop my guard." "Good. I'm happy to see my son understands. There's no mercy on the battlefield, Anthony. Once you delay for a split second, you are dead. Never pause your sword. Never halt your magic. Always push through. I once had a friend, a best friend at that, whom I trusted with my life. For 70 years we went through it all together, but we never bowed our heads. We came back alive and on top each time. But I was betrayed. It turns out that he was with the Forsaken cult from the very beginning, and his job was to get close to me, build trust. The day he betrayed me, we both fought to death and died on the battlefield after I killed all his companions who came together to kill me. We all died that day. Anthony's mind went blank. Father died before he could speak. His father continued, "But your grandmother saved me and brought me back to life. Father arrived on time and took my body to Mom, which she used a skill to bring me back to life. Father warned me, as I am here warning you, but I didn't listen and paid for it with my life." That's how the rumors of Mom possessing a skill that can bring back the dead began, but she denied it all. As time passed, people didn't believe it, but no one can truly answer. In essence, don't trust anyone who isn't bound by mana contract, that has no loophole or family. Do not pay the price like me. Anthony fell into deep thoughts. He already guessed that people would side with the demons. It was natural, as there was no way demon would invade for 7 million years, and people didn't follow them. That was impossible, but he didn't expect his father's story. His best friend spent 70 years on a mission. He couldn't even understand this concept of time. As in his previous life, 70 years was already an excessively long time. At the end, he only looked at his father and said with a bow, "I will not disappoint the patriarch." This is the first time he referred to his father as the patriarch. That was because this is a serious moment. He had to answer on the occasion. His parents smiled and asked him about his training, which he answered all questions, and they still stuffed resources like potions in his space ring, which he always transfers to his inventory. He went back to his room, calmed his mind, and started thinking on his next course of action. He planned to take it easy, but it seemed the game was set to abysmal mode right from the beginning. He knew for the demons to survive 7 million years till now, they're more than just cockroaches, he sighed, but he looked determined. Then he thought, "I am already a rank. I wonder if I can find who cursed me." Then he sat down and activated his skill Omniscient, trying to see who cursed him. His eyes moved and looked down at the world from a bird's eye view. Then he went straight for the information he wanted. He saw a blurry existence in a coffin emitting a thick dark aura which seemed to surpass the SSS rank. He didn't know the rank, but surely above it, he knew what that dark aura was. Chaos, attributes of the demons, and those who sold their soul to them for more power. He tried to see it clearly, but his mana rank was still too low to use the authority to its full usage. He then deactivated the skill. He sighed, already expecting this. Then it clicked his mind to use the all-seeing eyes. He activated the all-seeing eyes, and he gazed into the past and watched it from a third-person view and saw it, the same person in coffin. It was someone from a human race who was part of the Forsaken cult. Then the person's information entered his mind. Then he deactivated the skill. It turns out the person who cursed him is suffering from the Blacklash and is in deep slumber. He sealed himself so it won't affect him more. But the question remains, why was he cursed? He can't just get cursed out of nowhere. Then he activated the all-seeing eyes again and looked further into the past, gazing back to when the man even had the idea to curse. There he saw it all. It was the same man who sent his father's best friend to his father's side to gain trust. After the mission failed and his father survived, but the best friend died, the man wanted revenge. It turns out he raised his father's best friend like a son. He didn't make him sell his soul. So his so-called son can still use mana like a normal person, then gain his father's trust. This is practically how the Forsaken do it. Not all them sell their soul, so they can still use normal mana and be able to infiltrate places openly. So he cursed him a week after his birth, after the man got news. Then 10 years later, he received a Blacklash from the curse. His lifespan was rapidly declining. So he used another ancient rank artifact like the curse to seal himself away to preserve his life. Anthony was bamboozled. It turns out the man behind the scenes of his father's death was still alive for all these while, and no one knew. Anthony's gaze turned cold. "You better stay in that coffin and wait for me. I will be there to collect what's mine," he said in his mind. Then he slept off. Anthony woke up, but still feeling drowsy. He brushed and bathed. as he wears his clothes. He's signed in for the day. Congratulations to the host for winning knowledge on all beasts and demons. Anthony immediately accepted the reward. His mind was flooded for 2 minutes before a certain light flashed his eyes. He just got knowledge of all demons and beasts, weakness, habitat, racial secrets. He had all. Those demons better not look his way, he thought as he dressed. After dressing, he stood in front of his mirror to admire himself yet again. He was ugly in his first life, don't blame him. He was now 15 years old, standing at 6 feet 2 inches height. He is as happy with his height as he wasn't this tall before. His new height complemented his white hair, blue charming eyes, the perfect jawline, all down to his body tone and muscles. His body was literally screaming perfection. He shakes his head as he goes downstairs to meet his parents at the dining hall. His grandparents already left, so it was just him and his parents. They went straight to the dining for breakfast. As they ate, they talked and asked about training. Then his mother asked, "How are you preparing for the academy?" Anthony sighed. "The academy arc is about to begin, huh?" he said in his mind. "Mom, there's nothing to prepare. Just be ready to hear the null name sound in the academy." They smiled, knowing the kind of monster their child was. "Prepare everything. 1 week from now, your father and I will drop you off and watch your entrance exam," she said. "Would Grandpa be there?" he asked. "He might," answered his father. Breakfast ended, and everyone went to work. Anthony returned to his room and opened his status window to see how far he has come after 5 years. After the first year, he spent the remaining 4 years in the divine realm. While his clone replaced him, he didn't need to lie that he was going into seclusion anymore, though the clones still pretended to cultivate time to time. He spent those 4 years in the remain at 1:5 dilation, only coming out once or twice a month, so he won't lose himself. With 5x speed, he spent 20 years in the realm. It took him 10 years' worth of time in the divine realm to digest all knowledge he received. When he climbed to A+ rank at 11 years old, his thought compartment increased from 1 million directly 5 million. The parallel thinking blessing him with 10 million compartments. Dividing the knowledge into 10 million places, he spent 10 years digesting them all. Then he spent 7 years refining his magic and weapons, tuning everything to the knowledge as he trained, even creating his own weapon technique, combined and created magic swordsman skill. Then he spent the remaining 3 years cultivating to the SS+ rank, which was quite hard if he didn't consume all resources from shop system to push his rank upwards. Due to his spending limit on the system, he can't rank up to SSS at the moment. Thanks to his physique, he was able to have a perfect foundation. If not, he won't have dared such audacious cultivation method. It was all thanks to the physique. Then a message appeared before him. "No thanks to me, huh? Seems I might have to take back my cultivation manual." Anthony immediately stood up and started bowing and flattering the being. After an hour of bootlicking and sycophantic behavior, he stopped. "Status," he said in his mind. "Host, null Anthony. Age, 15 years old. Race, human. Rank, SS+. Class, magic swordsman. Physiques, the beginning of all things. Bloodline, primordial bloodline. Talent, limitless. Skills, click to view. Affinities, fire, water, earth, wood, wind, lightning, light, darkness, space, time, metal, ice, void, illusion. Authority, authority of information. Ding. Due to the host reaching rank SS, new bloodline ability. Bloodline servant has been unlocked. More mana and magic knowledge unlocked. Gain new affinity, void, and illusion. Due to host reaching rank SS, new knowledge from the physique would be allocated. True poison immunity unlocked. Poison body unlocked. Due to host reaching rank SS, the last skill from the host wish is granted. Passive, scheming mind. Grants the host all knowledge and experience about schemes from people he knows. Due to host reaching rank SS, an authority skill has been unlocked. Perfect one. Scheming mind was the last wish he had, which made him have experience in scheming. All sorts of memories fill up his head in a split second about scheming and counter-scheming. It even came with battle tactic. It was supposed to come together with battle experience, which made him very experienced in a battle. How can you survive in this world without battle experience and schemes? Who knows what schemes are already going on in the academy? All those old men that are always scheming behind the scenes always terrified him when he read about them in novels. He felt a headache coming from the amount of knowledge and information from the bloodline and physique he would have to process again after spending over 12 years on the previous one. Blood Servant allows the host to give his blood essence to beings, elevating their talent to one rank below you, granting them perk according to their class, enhancing already possessed elements, making them the best of their field only second to the host. They can't betray the host, even if they surpass the host in rank. There is no punishment for betrayal since betrayal is impossible. Even their souls are enslaved. Poison Body allows the host to create any poison with any effect in his body according to thought. Anthony was gobsmacked when he read this. Blood Servant would work with his plans very well, but Poison Body was another game altogether. He could literally just create a poison and release it into the air and make it only affect those that use chaos instead of mana. He had too many routes to uproot these demons and Forsaken Cult, he smiled. He couldn't wait to see all those young master who should be crawling at D rank or lower. He chuckled. He couldn't wait. Passive skill, perfect one. Any information search about the host through magical or physical means would turn up how the host wants it to be. Host would be notified when information is being dug up, and he would modify the information he wants the person to find. This ability, simple, made him chuckle. With this, he could mislead a lot of people. All those seerers, diviners, with this, he could escape them all. He recently found out some ranks from his father that are above the SSS, the Master rank, the Grandmaster rank, Paragon Realm. They're all divided into 9 levels. He didn't bother complaining that there were too many ranks. With his shop system that was basically free, he can pump himself and his blood slaves, and even buy them pills that grant physique. They will all be freaks of nature. He drooled from his plans, but for now he has to prepare for the academy. From the novels he read, academy entrance exams are usually fighting beast or fighting 1 versus 1. Also, he would get to meet other race and children from other family in the human domain. Damn, a lot of battle would go on in that academy. But he was ready for them all. His battle intent radiated out from his body, even though he never battled aside battling robots he bought from the system. But with his rank, is this any different than bullying? He sneered at his thoughts. Such thinking will get me killed. He looked at the time. It was already 10 p.m. He closed his eyes to sleep, even though he didn't need sleep. He woke up at 11 a.m. the next day, yawning with no care in the world of who saw him. He freshened up in a shower and dressed up, and as usual he signed in, but he was shocked to the core by what he got. Congratulations to the host for winning the abilities of the Shadow Monarch. Interfers, recalibrating, wait a moment host. After 2 minutes, the system came back. By the authority of? The host will be allowed to select 6 members from the Shadow Monarch army. Anthony was stunned. The being intervened again. Didn't the being say he won't be able to see him again, but it kept coming back? Was it bored? Immediately, he thought this. The system message changed. By the authority of? The host will be allowed to select 3 members from the Shadow Monarch army. He saw that the original 6 has dropped to 3 because of his useless thoughts. He wailed. He apologized, but the system didn't change. It even inserted a 1-minute timer, which started counting down immediately. Out of fear, he immediately picked his shadows. Host has picked Bellion, the fallen angel. Host has picked Baru, the Ant King. Host has picked Igris, the Swordmaster. All shadows have been summoned. They are all at Paragon level 9. Anthony was astonished. He got the 3 strongest, all of them at peak Paragon rank, and even got the Shadow Monarch ability. He could use this ability in tandem with Blood Servant, and it would be... Anthony's mind exploded. He started guessing if he was son. It came bearing gift each time. The being knew the Shadow Monarch was his best fictional character, so he presented him with gifts. He wanted to bow in a random direction, but before he could, 3 shadows materialized out of nowhere. Anthony was shocked by their appearance. Bellion, Igris, Baru immediately knelt on one knee and said, "Master." He didn't know how to reply. He was still drowning in happiness. Then he replied to the 3 of them. "We have a long road ahead. Train your skills in the shadow world, and always be ready to fight." The 3 nodded and disappeared from his sight into the shadow world. But they could still see and hear what was happening at all times. If their master was ever in danger, they would spring out and kill who dares trespass. He immediately went downstairs to find the butler. "Uncle, good morning, how are you doing?" He usually calls the butler uncle. His mind couldn't bring him to call an OP big shot like him butler. "Good morning, young master. I'm good, how are you?" "Do you need anything?" the butler replied. Anthony asked, "Uncle, do you know any cemetery or where big shot are buried at least the grandmaster rank?" He knew he was greedy, but after seeing his 3 shadows, he couldn't just bring any shadow into the shadow world. The butler thought and answered, "Yes, young master. I know where some are buried from master to the paragon rank are there. But for the rank above that, I'm sorry, young master, but they are not buried." Anthony immediately nodded, not paying the other rankers that are not buried any mind. That was not his concern right now. He said to the butler, "Let's go there immediately." He started moving towards the garage. The butler followed and asked, "Do you need anything there, young master?" Anthony replied with a straight face, "I'm going to the academy soon. I have to pay my respects to those who protected us from the demons." The butler drove the Ferrari and they got to the cemetery. Anthony didn't know if this place was a cemetery or a palace, but considering their rank and contributions to humanity, it was worth the fun. Even the land was blessed by a priest above the paragon rank. The flowers, the air, everything here said here was not a cemetery. He immediately entered and told his butler to wait outside for him. The butler waited in the car, but still used his sense to see the young master in case of action. Anthony erected a void barrier. He told the butler he didn't want to be disturbed. The butler agreed, caused his sense pass through the barriers. He didn't know that it was Anthony that allowed his senses to pass. If not, how can he cross the void? Anthony then used the authority skill, perfect one to fool his sense, and made the butler see him giving thanks and all that to the dead expert. He may just have gotten void affinity recently, but he has studied all the knowledge of all elements and mana. This is just child's play. But in reality, he was going to awaken them all. He stood at the cemetery and wanted to speak the command words, just to remember. He didn't set any. As if on cue, the system chimes. Host should choose a command word. Anthony thought for a while. He wanted to use the Shadow Monarch popular word, but who knows whether he would be killed by the Shadow Monarch in a parallel world out of anger. He stole his Shadow Soldier, stole his abilities, and now he stole his phrase, "Wasn't that courting death?" And last time, the Shadow Monarch was already a god who said he hasn't gotten stronger again. Then he picked his word, emerge. Command word, emerge, has been saved. Then Anthony looked around and said with happiness coursing his veins, "Emerge." A black-purple aura spread, and beings woke up from their slumber. They all varied from master rank to paragon. He looked around and saw there about 3,000 people buried here according to the butler, but he got only 120. This was already a huge gain. They all remembered their past life, but now they're loyal to him. They all knelt and greeted Master. He noticed only 2 people were at the peak paragon rank. One was an assassin. The other was pure marital artist who used his body. Anthony had respect for martial artists. He asked their names. The assassin's name was unknown when he was alive since no one ever caught him. He died of old age. The martial artist was called George. He only asked these 2 people their names. The rest he didn't have brain capacity to remember them. He sent them all to the shadow world, told them to train and break through. All of this happened in 5 minutes. He then removed the space barrier and he left with the butler. When he arrived at the estate, he asked the butler, "Where did mother and father go?" The butler replied, "They had businesses to handle for some time. They would be back soon." Anthony nodded and returned to his room after having breakfast, but his parents weren't here to keep him company. When he entered, he counted his shadow. He had 20 paragons. That was a nice spoil, 40 grandmasters, 60 masters, all of them in the shadow world, training to break through to the next rank. As their shadow, they require no sustenance aside mana. They could train forever as far mana was provided. And who was Anthony? He was the boy who wished for an infinite mana passive skill, but he would abuse this skill in the future. Then he opened his phone and just scrolled through his chats and went to the Mananet to see if there was any news today. As he pressed his phone, the whole day passed by, and it was already 1 a.m. He sighed as he didn't get to see his parents today. With that, he went to sleep. Just like his dreams, 6 days flashed by, and the day of the academy entrance exam arrived. The registration was done online, which required only name, face, and mana rank, but rank was optional, which of course Anthony didn't fill in. He had already registered himself a month ago, the academy runs a background check on every single new student in order not to feed the enemy and fatten it up in their own home. The name of the academy was Ammonite Peak Academy, which was understandable cause they offered course on every single profession and every race attends there. The teachers are of a variety of race. The academy takes in 1,000 students every year, but out of that 1,000, some don't even make it through the first year, some drop out, some die, some don't make it to the second year cause of failing to meet the requirements like mana rank, passing the courses required, and all that. The dean of the school was a renowned world powerhouse, a male dragon nicknamed the Slaughterer. People died from heart attack just by hearing his name. The vice president was a vampire, so beautiful that she could cause war alone in his previous life. He had seen her picture on Mananet, but she was still leagues away from him, but he still commended her for her efforts and good genes. The vice president is nicknamed the Blood Empress. All she had to do was control the blood running in the veins of her enemy, and they will die. Anthony felt this was cheating and too OP, but he kept quiet when he remembered his status window and endless skills he got in the span of 5 years. He couldn't even count, and were all OP in their rights. He couldn't wait to see these races and see what makes them special. As he was daydreaming, he heard his father's voice, so he came downstairs. He greeted the butler and went straight to his father, who was standing outside at the garage. "Are you done packing?" he asked. "Yes, father. I've been packing since I registered till now," he replied. "Where is Mom?" he asked. "She would arrive at the venue with your grandparents," the father replied. Then they got into the car and left with a fleet of cars following in a convoy. These were the guards. Anthony didn't really pack anything, just cloths and 5 years potions his father seems to have endless supply of. He left some potions and cloths and a sword in his space ring so as to not get suspicious of having an empty space ring. As they drove, he looked outside, anticipating battle. Knowing he would crush them, he remembered the requirement for graduation in the academy was SS rank. He couldn't help but laugh. He hasn't even gotten admitted to the academy, but has qualified to graduate. As he gazed outside, his father's voice sounded in his ears. "Do you know why other races dominates the academy while the human race remain at the middle tier?" asked Michael. "Bloodline inheritance," answered Anthony. Anthony knew very well the power of bloodline inheritance. The knowledge his own bloodline gives him shocks him every now and then when he goes through new information, he understands how broken that thing is. He knows the horror of the human race cause he is doing the opposite, enjoying the benefit. What an irony. His father nods at his son's answer. It's precisely because of that other races dominate. But that was before we humans came with our knowledge from millions of years of research, through that we are able to stand toe to toe at this moment in general. Inside the academy, you will see other races already far ahead because of their bloodline or physique, but don't be worried, my son, for you are Null Michael's son. I don't force you to be top 10, but if you are top 20, that's enough, Michael said. Anthony didn't know what to say. Top 10? Top 20? If he doesn't win the number 1, he should just swing by his next life. Well, he just hadn't shown his family how far he has come. Even now in the car, he's only emitting rank F or A. He wanted to promise his father that he would be rank 1. But he knows he would only sound like a naive child. He has seen the news on Mananet, and he knows. The top 50 are dominated by other race. Humans barely have 5 to 10 people in this rank, but he just smiled like an innocent boy. He won't be taking off his mana rank concealment for anybody. He already read the rules of the school, and it doesn't violate it. He only has to show his SS rank when he wants to graduate, that's all. Also, the other children from the other 5 family will be there. Make connections if you want to. Our name is enough not to make any at all if you wish, Michael said. Anthony wasn't planning on talking to any of them. He doesn't even know what they looked like, if they had red hair or pink eyes or whatever. He only knows the Crimson family is flame red hair because of his mother and grandmother. The Null family is white hair. That's all. For the rest of other family, show your strength, and I will know the color of your family hair. In 4 hours, they got to Academy City. Yes, the school was a freaking city. This was the center of all domains, but it's understandable. Too many race are in the academy. You need a whole another level of space. So the school was literally the center of the world. The guards at the city gate saw the insignia of the Null family on the cars, which was basically a sword piercing a crown. The guards just shifted and bowed as the cars passed. They didn't go through security. Nothing stopped them till they got to the academic building. The family guards came rushing, opening the car door. Anthony and his father made their way to the exam venue. As we walked, many people looked at us and whispered and pointed at us, but I didn't spare them a glance. I was out of my normal demeanor of joking around when alone or with family, as a passive skill of mine from the sign-in system was working right now. Passive skills. Emperor demeanor. Your whole existence radiates the demeanor of an emperor. This skills basically keeps his attitude perfect, though he could be simple turn it off. But why should he? He would be the emperor of this academy. Many people threw gazes at me, but I knew it was for my looks. I was already expecting the Dragon King and Demon King to swoop down and kidnap me at any time from now. He is just being delusional again. We got to the exam venue. 3 men and 7 women sat at the table attending the students who registered. As soon as I walked in, people at the front turned to see the new person who entered, but as soon as they gazed at me, they couldn't move their eyes. I ignored all of them and lined up. Who's he? He is so handsome. Is someone with this type of face supposed to be here? Are you sure he is a human? He is F rank after 5 years. Seems his looks is all he's got. Too bad I won't get to see such face in class. As they talked and pointed and whispered about my face and low rank, I didn't even flinch because I know they are in for a surprise. My father, who was behind, just stood there without saying anything. A few minutes later, it was my turn. The man attending to me is from the elf race. He too was handsome, as all elves are normally handsome. What's your name? He asked without looking up. No, Anthony, I replied. Then he typed fast across his laptop and brought up my profile. Then he raised his eyes to confirm it was me. Then our eyes met. There I knew the professor was charmed too, but like an expert, it took him only 2 seconds to recover, and he went back to professional mode and kept a straight face like he wasn't asking his mind, how can a handsome person exist? Verified. You may enter, he said. I turned back and glanced at my father. We nodded at each other. I went into the exam hall my father was at. Well, I don't know, but he will be somewhere observing the battle exam. I entered the hall, and I saw numerous people, pretty sure there are over 10 million. I couldn't believe it, 10 million people, all within the age of 15 to 17. The academy doesn't accept once you are 18. All from different races, all sitting and waiting, some talking, some just sat on the floor as there are no seats here, and some gaze into space, some sleeping, some eating, some meditating. I just found a corner, bought a chair from the system shop. Well, more like a comfy throne, I sat on it and crossed my legs and folded arms and closed my eyes and waited for them. Even with my eyes closed, I can still see using all-seeing eyes, which I found out 2 years ago. Some looked at me weirdly, some murmured, but I didn't care. I just waited for this to be over. After waiting for 2 hours, it was finally 12 p.m. Immediately it hit the time. The entrance door closed. A woman appeared out of nowhere. Though I already saw her floating while hiding in space when I entered, she was shocked when I saw her. But I didn't speak to her. I just sat down. She was the vice president, the Blood Empress. Before she appeared, I already stood up and put the chair into my space ring. It would be weird if the chair disappeared and she didn't see it in my space ring. Immediately she appeared. Everyone stood up, as everyone recognized her for her power and beauty. Her waist-length blood red hair, dancing in air, as if they were listening to the songs of the wind. Then she said, "You all are here for the exam. The first exam would be a written exam. The second would be a battle exam. Both would determine those who qualify for the final and third round. Out of you millions, we are only picking 1,000, so take your first and second round seriously." She raised her jade-like hand and snapped her fingers, and everyone in the room were teleported into another room that was enclosed. I looked around and saw no way for exit or entrance. All of us were seated. In front of you is your question paper. Answer them immediately. The written exam starts by 12:30 and ends by 2:30. You have 2 hours to finish this. When I disappear, it signifies the beginning of the exam. When I appear, it's the end. As she was speaking, my mind wandered off. I thought there must be a reason she is here. There is no way someone of her status and level would supervise an exam that even the lowest level professor could do. As I thought that, I used all-seeing eyes on everyone in the class. Then I finally understood why she was here. She was probably here to observe up close someone she planned to take in as a disciple. I looked forward and I saw a vampire girl sitting comfortably in the A-rank mana rank, but her aura didn't show it. She radiated a D-rank aura. It seems many people are playing the pig to eat the tiger, I thought. There were many B rankers here, but not a single one of them showed it, even the small number of ranks. As I was thinking of other things, she listed the rules and disappeared. Of course, she is still here hiding in space. I flipped my paper and looked at the questions. 20 questions for 100 marks, 5 marks each. All these questions are too basic that I don't even have to think to know it. I just went straight and answered them. I wrote in normal pace, not fast, but not slow either, but my pen never stopped, and in 30 minutes I was done. I flipped over the paper and slept off. The rule says if you're done, flip over and wait, so that's what I did. When time was over, she appeared again. She didn't even move, but the papers were pulled by some force and neatly arranged itself in front of her and disappeared. She looked around and said, the practical part would start by 3 p.m. sharp. Start arranging what you need. You'll be teleported to the Baran Forest, where you'll hunt for 3 hours. The beasts there rank from F to a rank. She snapped her finger again, and watches appeared on everyone's wrist. I couldn't help but marvel at her space control. Displacing and placing however she wants, she really mastered her art. Those watches are the school wristwatch. It will display everyone's ranking on it. The rank of beast you kill give corresponding points. If you feel you're in danger, just destroy the watch with magic or brute strength or whatever. You'll be teleported out. Then a fairy raised her hand, seeming to want to ask a question. The vice president nodded. Then the fairy asked, can we fight other people for their points? I looked at her and smiled. She really did ask the million-dollar question. Everyone had this question in their head. The vice president smiled and said, yes, you can. If you defeat them, you get half their points, but if they defeat you, you lose it all. Also, you don't have to randomly look for people. Just select anybody on the ranking, and the watch would show you their location. Follow the map it shows you, and you'll meet your target. It also shows how much time is left of the 3 hours you have. With that, she disappeared again. Everyone was shocked at her answer. They would lose all point if they attacked someone and ended up losing. That means before you make a move, be sure. It even gave tracking function. Everyone in the hall started memorizing people weaker than them, so if they saw them, they would attack immediately. I chuckled at their games. The vice principal listed more rules, like no potion and use only your weapon and all that. Basically, no external influence is allowed. Once caught, they will be disqualified totally. Not even a matter of losing point. The person should just try the exam again next year if they're not older than 17. With that, everyone brought out what they need from their storage rings, cross-checked, stretched to enter perfect condition. This was their future on the line here. I only brought out my sword, which I tied to my waist. This was my first battle in this life. I couldn't wait. Once it was 3 p.m., she appeared again and snapped her fingers. When Anthony opened his eyes, all he saw were extremely tall trees and grass with sand, mountains on the side. Anthony didn't know how to explain it, but the whole forest looked out of order. Anthony didn't know which part of the forest it was, which he didn't care about since he's never been here. As he was walking, suddenly an ape dropped from the sky, landing directly on him. But he dodged, and the ape landed on the ground, causing a mini earthquake and a deep ravine. BLM. He looked at the beast that tried to drop such weight on him. The beast rushed towards him and punched at his head. It was fast for its eyes, but to Anthony, it was too slow. He sidestepped and swung his sword horizontally, cleanly taking the head of the beast. He left like he wasn't the culprit. He started running at a simple pace. Then he spotted a pack of wolves. He changed directions, starting running towards them. He jumped and landed in their midst. There were 9 of them. The wolves immediately howled. Awoo-awoo. Anthony let them call the remaining packs, so he could clean them once and for all. Once they all arrived, there were 30 in total. He looked at them and said, let the party begin. As if on cue, the first wolf rushed in, but before it could even attack, its head was separated from its body. Anthony was already near the next wolf before the first wolf even hit the ground. He swung his sword, slicing the wolf in half. Before he could move to the next victim, a wolf appeared behind Anthony and slashed with its claws, though Anthony was facing forward. He had the all-seeing eyes that granted a passive 360 perfect view, so he already saw it coming. He increased his speed, ducked, and turned and sliced, decapitating it. Blood hit the floor. Splat. Anthony looked around. The wolves moved each with the claws. Anthony then increased his speed to the speed of a B rank. He blurred and flashed repeatedly for a second. When he appeared again, he was standing with his sword sheathed. Then he walked away. As he took the first step, all the wolves hit the ground with their heads separated from their bodies with blood flowing, forming a bath. VVIP area. The vice president who was watching the battle looked at Null family and said to Collins, "It seems your family seems to have given birth to yet another genius after your son, Michael." Null Collins smiled. He looked at a particular vampire girl who was controlling blood and killing monsters. She was literally killing them with the blood of their kin. He said to the Blood Empress, "You seem to have found a disciple." She smiled and nodded and replied, "She still has a long way to go, but with her talent, she can overcome." Collins then said, "I wonder if she could defeat my grandson in the next battle." The Blood Empress frowned, remembering how strong Collins' son Michael was to be ranked second in his year throughout. Even the first-ranked couldn't hold him down, as they always fought to a draw, and now that monster has given birth to another monster. His wife was ranked third and was a year lower than him in the academy. They were simply the first of their kind, as humans don't normally make it to the top 10. She looked at Anthony's direction, sensing his F rank aura as usual. She tried seeing through it forcefully, but failed. She shook her head and continued watching. On another side of the Baran forest, it's been an hour and a half since the beginning of the second round. A vampire girl could be seen running through the forest, occasionally killing monsters along the way that weren't worth her time. Her name, Terps Tiara, a vampire with a royal rank bloodline, which made others jealous. Some in praise, some were in awe, but she never paid any attention to them, for she knew, the moment she lost it all those who flocked her would turn on her. As she was making her way through the forest, she heard sounds of blood. Then she turned and moved in that direction. She climbed trees and maneuvered her ways through them in a way that would even put the monkey bloodline to shame. Then she saw her target and landed directly in front of the monster. It was an A+ rank hobgoblin. She looked at her enemy and gauged its strength. She was at the minor A rank, while her opponent was peak A rank, 2 minor ranks above her. But if she can't even cross minor ranks to defeat an enemy, she might as well just stab herself with a stake to the heart. The vampire aren't afraid of stakes or have it as a weakness in this novel. This was a popular misunderstanding, and they didn't bother correcting it. Why correct your enemy about your weakness, besides during a fight who has time for stake? Just cut the head or stab the heart. Every fighter knows this. The hobgoblin was holding a Gantz sword. It also assessed its enemy. Tiara unsheathed her sword and held it on her right hand. They both moved at the same time. Their weapons met, sending off sparks of light as they moved. Strength for strength, speed for speed. Clank, clank, clank. In a matter of 3 minutes, they have clashed over 500 times. They left destruction in their wake. Nearby monsters ran away. Those who couldn't died. They created ravines as they moved. The hobgoblin swung its Gantz sword vertically. Tiara dodged and swung her sword diagonally across the monster chest while using her sword art. Sword art, Blood Reaper. Blood gushed out of the monster chest into the air, then it hit the ground. Splat, splat. Tiara appears some meters away from the hobgoblin, panting and sweating. Her sword dripped of the monster's blood. The hobgoblin was quiet for 2 seconds before its aura shifted. It emitted a thick red aura that nearly suffocated Tiara. But she smiled and said, "It's too late. It was nice while it lasted." She raised her hand and controlled the blood on her sword and the one that came from the hobgoblin body and monsters that died from their collision. She created thick blood chains with it and chained up the hobgoblin before it completely entered the berserk state. Then she moved. She appeared in front of the hobgoblin and cleaved, creating a faint red line. Swish! Thud! The monster's head fell. Thump, its body followed. Tiara breathed a sigh of relief and sat down to recover for 5 minutes. 5 minutes later, she stood up, smiled at her victory, then looked at the ranking, expecting herself to be at the top. Ranking: 1/null, Anthony/human. 2/Terps, Tiara/vampire. 3/Vaughn, Brian/dragon. 4/Blaze, Patrick/phoenix. 5/Fairs, Fair/fairy. 6/Stormbringer/titan. 7/Storm Rider/titan. 8/Akesh, Woodvale, /elf. 9/Vaughn, Karen, /dragon. 10/Blaze, Lillian, /phoenix. She was speechless. She has been hunting for 2 hours now, but she was on rank 2. Could there be a mistake, she thought. A human at that, she doubted what she saw, but she had no choice but to believe it. She sighed, then decided to increase her hunting speed in order to take her rightful spot. She channeled mana into her feet and increased her speed and ran at her top speed. Leaving after images, she only has an hour left and she must seize it. Anthony was moving at a leisurely pace, jumping from tree to tree. Sometime he ran on the ground. It's been 2 hours, and all monsters he met he killed. None entertained him. He sighed. Is this what those novel characters feel like when they reach the absolute peak, but boredom becomes their greatest enemy? He thought as he moved with pure grace. As he ran on the ground, a giant snake pounced out from one of the trees, baring its fangs to bite him. Anthony didn't even spare the monster a glance. He just raised his hand and slapped its head, which exploded to bits. Its large body dropped from the tree to the ground. None of this slowed down Anthony's pace even by a fraction of a second. His aura was still at F. That's why all these weaker creatures keep attacking, but he just slapped them all to death. As he moved, his sight picked up something 2 kilometers ahead. He increased his speed and arrived in 5 seconds and landed in front of the monster. A human, said the monster. Anthony was stunned too. He was looking at an orc, a genuine battle-hardened orc, which was at the S+ rank from the aura it was releasing. It held a spear weapon which seems too advanced for an orc, but possessing it spoke volumes of its strength and could be only acquired one way, killing an S+ warrior. Some S-rank monsters are able to speak. As they develop their own art and techniques, their intelligence goes beyond their race. They're usually called an awakened monster. So any monster which can speak and has a weapon can definitely use techniques. They were even more dangerous than SS rank monsters who don't have any, since they possess intelligence. The orc observed Anthony and his weak aura and said, "Human, I'm hungry. You would have to do as food for now." Anthony was excited. His first real battle. He was excited because he was limiting himself to A+ rank, so he would feel the thrill in fighting this monster while being a rank lower. The orc then took a step and directly appeared in front of Anthony and stretched its hand to catch the weak little human. Anthony was shocked. He expected a spear technique and art, but didn't see a movement art coming. But he was still faster than the orc, so he leaped backwards, appearing further away, which stunned the orc that his weak little meal had such speed. "It seems you were faking all along, human," the orc said as it spins its spear in his hand. Anthony was waiting. Even with him restricting himself to A+ rank, he can still move faster than the orc cause of his physique. The orc suddenly appeared in front of Anthony with a faster speed than before and thrusts his spear towards Anthony's heart. Anthony calmly blocks with his sword, then he counterattacks by slashing at the right side of the orc, which the orc blocked with its brute strength. But Anthony's sword broke. Anthony immediately stepped back, looked at his sword and sighed, then looked at his system shop and bought what he really always fantasized about when fighting: a katana. Katana. A katana created by? With a thought. Effects. 1. Growth type. Whatever rank its owner reaches, it will reach. 2. Disguise. The weapon can take any design the owner wishes. 3. Indestructible. As a weapon crafted by, it can never be broken or chipped. 4. Can shape-shift into other weapon. Current rank. Rank SS+. He disguised the katana to have the same design as his just broken sword before taking it out, then looked at the orc who was waiting for him to finish his business. Anthony took a stance and said, "Let's dance." They both moved and clashed. Immediately their weapons met and an explosion occurred. Clank, 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 boom, boom, asterisk, asterisk. They exchanged blows. This was just with pure physical strength. They haven't even buffed up their body with mana. The orc thrust at his heart again. Anthony moved to block, but the orc smiled, changing direction for his head. It was a feint, but who was Anthony? He already knew it was a feint, but he played along. Immediately he blocks the spear aimed at his head. The orc's eyes widens in surprise, but before he could even make the next move, Anthony disappeared and appeared behind the orc with his katana dripping green blood and a rip and splurting sound followed, signifying the orc has just taken a blow and is bleeding due to an injury. The wound was vertical and ran across the chest to the shoulder. The orc could tell that if Anthony wanted at that moment, he could have taken his heart, but he didn't. The orc turned and looked at him and smiled again and said, "I shall give you a befitting battle and burial as my thanks to you." The orc covered his body with mana, covered the spear with aura, which surprised Anthony that a monster could use aura. He asked if this monster was from another race and was posing as an orc here. If it was another person, they would have been afraid the moment they saw the weapon coated in aura, as aura could increase the sharpness and durability of any weapon, and you must be talented enough to be able to wield aura and also be at the S rank at least, which also surprised Anthony that a monster was this talented. Movement technique, spear technique, aura. Anthony didn't take it as a monster anymore, as this was a fellow warrior. Anthony didn't bother coating his katana with aura, as he is posing as an A+ rank, and also the katana was already indestructible. He covered his body with mana, though he didn't need to, as his physique could easily match and surpass the origin speed and strength, but he didn't need to show all cards to the people watching just to fight an orc, and he also covered his katana with mana. The orc that was still standing blurred and appeared in front of Anthony and swung the spear diagonally with great force. Anthony blocked easily. The power from the swing of the spear left the mountain behind Anthony crumbling. They both increased their speed and strength, exchanging blows. The orc suddenly appeared behind Anthony. Spear technique. First step, rapid gatling. The orc thrusted his spear 25 times at all of Anthony's vital points. Anthony was already on the move to block the attack. Endless technique. Katana series. Constant flow. Anthony's katana moved at extreme fast speed and parried all 25 attacks. Then he counter-attacked at the same time. Endless technique. Katana series. Continuous slash. Anthony's katana moved again, but with greater speed this time, as he slashed 100 times in a second. Spear technique. Fourth step. Rock stance. The orc moved his spear to meet Anthony's attacks head-on. He blocked 75 slashes, but he couldn't increase his speed fast enough to block the rest, so he was injured, but he remained undeterred. They continued exchanging attacks, laying wherever they appeared to waste. Explosion rang continuously as they moved, leaving only streaks of red light as they clashed. They've been fighting for 50 minutes now, but Anthony was unaware of this. He was feeling whole at this moment. He felt one with his katana. He has trained and learned all knowledge his physique gave him and integrated them to his daily life, but he had never fought battle to actually feel complete. Here he was in the zone in his first real battle. He didn't need to think of the next attack. He just attacked. He didn't need to think of the next move. His body automatically flowed peacefully with grace. He was in a mysterious state. The orc already had a lot of injuries and should have been dead, but the tenacity and body of the orc race is something everyone understands, as only titans and dragons could stand above them in pure physical strength. Though the orc race don't occupy any domain on their own, everyone knew just how absurd the orc race body was. If they had a bloodline or higher intelligence to match this, they would have been at the top with the dragons and titans, and all orc were natural fighters. The orc changed the style of his attack, suddenly attaching fire to his aura and spear and attacked with greater power. He could tell he was running out of time, so he increased power and speed to bring his opponent down with him. There was no draw, no running away, nothing. This was the way of their race. He released his next technique, a technique he personally created through sheer talent, and he shall show it to his greatest opponent he has fought till date, for his name was Dreg. Spear technique. Dreg series, explosive spear. Dreg jumped high in the air and held his spear over his shoulder and thrust with all his might. A fire-shaped spear mixed with aura shot out from the spear and moved at a neck-breaking speed. Anthony didn't need to think how to block the attack. His body and mana moved as if it was in tune with the world. Endless technique, katana series, splitting the heavens. He swung his katana upwards, leaving a faint blue line as it moved. The katana split the fire spear into half. The halves landed on two sides around him, creating a deafening explosion. The forest shook at the might of their power. The orc was shocked that the human split its attack in half. Anthony looked at the orc and said, "Since you have shown your personal technique, I will show you mine as a sign of respect. If you survive this, it's my loss." Dreg immediately went on the defensive to brace for impact. Anthony took a step and appeared in front of the orc and swung his katana at the orc with lightning imbued in it. Null technique, katana series, raising swing. Dreg felt death for the first time since the battle started, but that won't make him take a step back. He moved, releasing his ultimate technique, as this was a decisive moment. Spear technique, Dreg series, cataclysmic wave. He swung at Anthony with fire and aura coated on his spear, just like how Anthony swung at him with lightning coated on his katana. Their attack met, and there was a deafening silence before everything within a 2-kilometer radius was reduced to ash and char. Space shattered apart in front of their attacks. Earthquake resounded within a 10 kilometers radius. Many monsters died due to the earthquake. Dust rose in a mushroom form, signifying the weight of their power. The dust from the attacks settled, and the charred body of the orc was seen split in half, and both half-charred. Anthony stood there for a while, staring into space. He subconscious activated his skill, the perfect one. Anybody who saw him would think he was just looking at the body of Dreg the orc, but his aura increased, flared before calming down 2 inches later. Anthony has broken through to the SSS rank. He stabilized his rank and woke up from his mysterious state. He deactivated the perfect one skill, and his aura was already back to the F rank that he always shows. He looked at the orc who battled him to this level. Even if he didn't go all out, or even use magic, or need even to use katana techniques, and bowed at the warrior. He looked at the time and saw only a few seconds were left. So he just stood there and waited. He didn't bother checking his ranking, as the amount of rank monsters he killed alone was greater in number than that killed by the top 10 combined. After a few seconds, Anthony and all contestants were teleported out of the forest. VIP area. The aura present here would make even people at the peak Paragon realm drop to their knees if they entered here by mistake. The room was extremely large and filled up with powerhouse from different race. They were all here to watch their junior and children perform. Each of them held their child in the highest pride, but at this moment everyone was dead silent. They all stared at the direction of a particular human with white hair, who the cause of the silence was linked to. This generation was called the Golden Generation because of various reasons. Various powerhouses gave birth easily if they tried, which was weird. So many powerhouses had children. That's why the VIP area was filled up, because these powerhouses came to observe their child perform. They normally don't come to these things, but their presence here meant they all at least had a child. This generation was called the Golden Generation because each child was more powerful than the previous generations, so everyone was expectant to see their child perform. The human they were looking at didn't even bother to look at them, but was focused on his son as nothing else mattered at the moment. The human was none other than Null Michael, the Sword Saint. His name alone spoke of his power. Even people in the room with him had to be careful when speaking with him, as they all know the beast that currently sat without a care. They all watched him grow from when he was little and knew his feats and records, which was simply too insane for a human. But no one said anything as his father. Null Collins, who was named the Lightning God, was another monster who didn't perform less than his son Michael. But now these two monsters has released another who just defeated an awakened orc at the S+ rank while being at the A+ rank without even as much as an injury. This spoke immensely on this white-haired family. The other powerhouses in the room looked at each other with different light flashing past their eyes. The patriarch of the Stellar family spoke first. It seems the Null family has given birth to another monster. Michael, who was sitting without a care, looked at him and said, "Of course, whose son do you think he is?" But what he didn't say was that he too was shocked. He knows how much of a monster he and his father Collins are. He wants his son to match and surpass them. But he didn't put pressure on him. That's why he left him to train alone and never asked, and told his son that top 20 was acceptable. He wanted to stand up and cheer, but he can't do that. He has to maintain the demeanor of the Sword Saint. He wanted to hug his son for being rank 1, but he knew it was far from over. The next event decides it all. In a different place, *********. Millions of people appeared out of nowhere. The vice president appeared and said, "The second round is over. The result would be out in 5 minutes. Those who are top 1,000 are all accepted as students," she said while still floating without a skill or trace of mana, as if the world itself begged to suspend her in place. A while later, the vice president disappeared. A thuff, people who reach the SSS rank and above can automatically fly. That still requires mana. Some didn't need to reach the rank, as they could already fly with a skill. But Anthony could sense the mana. She used to stay afloat. The students didn't sense it cause they were too weak and had less mana control. The reason she could fly as if she does it without mana was because of her mana control. Her mana control was too absurd, but Anthony could see it with his bare eyes. He could even sense and see it without his eyes cause he has a better mana control. It was already 6 p.m. and getting dark, but everywhere was still as bright as day. So without a watch, people would hardly guess the time here. 5 minutes later, a huge screen appeared over the head of all of them. They raised their heads looking for their names. Anthony didn't bother looking anywhere else and looked at rank 1 directly and saw his name. Then he went down the list. Student ranking 1/null, Anthony/human. 2/Terps, Tiara /vampire. 3/Von Brian/dragon. 4/Blaze Patrick/phoenix. 5/Fairs fair/fairy. 6/Stormbringer/titan. 7/Conrad Lionheart/human. 8/Storm Rider/titan. 9/Akesh Woodvale/elf. 10/Vaughn Karen/dragon. 11/Snow Landell/human. 12/Blaze Lillian/phoenix. 13/Pius Stella/human. 14/David Red/vampire. 15/Precious Fair/fairy. 16/Hemmelwolf/werewolf. 17/Hillary Amos/human. 18/Valentine Dwarfing/dwarf. 19/Joseph Woodvale/elf. 20/Isabel Crimson/human. The school doesn't release scores. They only release score for classes when they become students in the academy. He only looked at the top 20, cause they will be in the same class as the elites, but he was surprised that 5 other humans made it to top 20, and they were all from the top families. He sighed. "It looks like I will need to remember their hair color like I promised," he thought, then pulled out the chair again from a space ring and sat down with his leg crossed and eyes closed. The passive skill of Emperor Demeanor still taking effect, so his every move was with grace. The other children from the 5 top families in the human domain all looked at him, remembering the rumor about him, and they doubted their lives. Then why didn't he come out at all, they all thought. But no one would give an answer to their questions. All races were shocked by the appearance of 6 humans on the ranking, and a particular human taking the top spot. They all looked around at all human, trying to find out who it was. Terps Tiara, on the other hand, frowned seeing her second position, which didn't change even after adding the written exam score, which she was confident in. Then she looked at a particular human boy who sat on a throne with his eyes closed and legs crossed. Remembering seeing the human before the written test, she assessed him while she assessed everyone in the room to know who her opponents were. She didn't spend more than 3 seconds looking at him before, because she sensed his F-rank mana. The 3 seconds was spent by looking at his face, wondering how a human could be more handsome than dragons, phoenix, fairy, vampires, and elves. His mana rank still showed F rank, but she refused to believe it, as he was the most relaxed here. She made a guess that he was the one who stole her rank, and she would have to get it back from him at all cost. She was also shocked that 5 other humans actually entered the top 20. What is up with the humans this time around? Is it because it's a golden generation of all races? Even if it's a golden generation, the races with bloodline would still be on the top of the talent list. Is it because of their class? She thought of multiple scenarios. Maybe I'm overthinking things. It's not like it has anything to do with me. I only have to get my first rank back, she said, casting one more glance at the white-hair human boy. Then she started meditating, waiting for the final round. The vice president appeared again. She looked at everyone for a while this time. Those of you on the top 1,000, congratulations to you all. We will proceed to the final round now. But before that, she snapped her fingers immediately. She stopped speaking, and millions of people who weren't on the list got teleported out. More like kicked out of the school premises, while the top 1,000 were teleported to an insanely large arena that spanned 50 kilometers. Anthony admired her perfect space control, moving large amount of people in the same space to two. Different space at the exact time was no small feat. He was getting suspicious that this woman was purposely showing off. She continued speaking as they arrived at the arena. They were made to sit on chairs that surrounded the arena. They sat according to their rankings. The higher the rank, the higher the seat. This is the final round, which is not compulsory since you all are already accepted by the Academy. This round is for those who are not satisfied with their final rank. You can only challenge another ranker once. The top 20 have a right to preserve their ranks and can only be challenged by people within the top 20, and their battle would be the last, as you all are already students. Academy points are already allocated according to your rank. If you challenge anyone and lose, all your points will be transferred to that person. She allowed them to digest what she said for a while before she continued. The watch on your wrist is an Academy artifact provided to all students. It contains your ID, your points, Academy rules, map. You can use the watch to select the ranker you want to challenge, and you both will be transferred to the arena, and the fight will begin in a minute after you arrive at the arena. You may begin. With that, she disappeared again. As she left, many people looked at Anthony, looking at the human who was too handsome to be human and too weak from his mana rank to sit on the first seat. But nobody was an idiot here. Nobody would believe someone who triumphed over superior races was a mere F rank. Anthony already closed his eyes, as if he wasn't interested, but he was secretly watching, waiting to see the surprise his classmate would show. Tiara kept staring at Anthony with her blood-red eyes. Even the dragon named Brian that ranked third stared at him, all making their battle intent known and radiating powerful aura and ready to pounce at him. Many people were teleported from their seats. Only a few remained who didn't wish to challenge anyone and were satisfied with their rank. The matches almost started at the same time. Anthony watched all matches at the same time, seeing the ability of the so-called golden generation. Though he didn't show it, he was extremely happy. He was finally seeing and entering the magic world. Now, he can explore, he could free dive from now on. He watched all matches, and in 7 hours, all matches ended. The rankings didn't really change. Majority of those who challenged those above them lost. But they didn't go out without a fight, but it didn't matter. Their points were gone. They were all healed by the healers, and they all got back to their seats, and all their eyes gazed in the direction of the top 20 who sat like the rulers they were, especially one that released a pitiful aura but was extremely handsome and sat at the highest seat. If the others were kings, he is their emperor. The vice principal appeared again. She seems to be coming and going a lot, she said. Congratulations to those who moved up the rank, and to those who got free Academy points. People laughed at those who lost their points. Some people's face turned sour as they were reminded of their loss. The vice president continued. Now, onto the main event, the top 20. I declare its beginning. With that, she vanished. Anthony looked at his watch to see who challenged him, and what he saw nearly made him laugh. He was challenged by 10 people from rank 2 to rank 11 all him. He turned his head and looked at them and saw they were all looking at him as if he kidnapped their children. He shook his head and just raised his right hand in the air, signaling he wanted to talk to the person in charge. The vice president appeared and looked at him with her blood-red eyes, as if she wanted to stare into his soul, and she asked, "What do you need rank 1 null, Anthony?" Anthony smiled and said, "I don't have time to battle all 10 of them one by one. I request to take them all on at once." His word caused utter silence. Even people at the VVP were speechless. The dean looked at Null Collins and asked, "Has your grandson always been this daring, or does he not understand what is happening?" Collins frowned, looking at his grandson, wondering what was going through his head. Although his grandson surprised him with his strength, but challenging all 10 of them was a different altogether. That was too arrogant of him. But as a grandfather, he should believe in his grandson. Who knows, he might give him another scare. Collins smiled at the dean and said, "Why don't we just watch and see? Only time can tell." The dean looked at him and shook his head and talked to the vice president through telepathy, telling her to accept the challenge. The vice president looked at Anthony staring at him, trying to understand what this young human boy was thinking. Even the 10 people that challenged him looked at him like he was a fool. Even other students were stunned. Some felt he was too arrogant. Some weaker ones felt awe. Some wondered where he got his audacity from. Michael looked at his son, though his facial expression didn't show it. He was too shocked. He never thought his son would act like this. He thought his son was chewing more than he could swallow. But his son hasn't acted out since he was born, so there was no reason to act out now. So he chose to believe in his son. The human ranker won't normally challenge the top rankers because they were too powerful, but their generation is different. They believe they aren't weaker than other races now, and the first ranker was human like them. They refused to believe they were weaker, and now this fellow dare to take them all together plus other races. They sneered at his arrogance. The rankers in the lower 10s from 12 to 20 didn't bother challenging anybody. They could get the rank they wanted during midterms for free. Why lose points for just an increase in rank? They were already in top 20 and will be in the same class, so there's no benefit for them, asides if they want to challenge rank 1. The vice president looked at Anthony and said, "Your request has been accepted. After arriving at the arena, the match would start after 2 minutes when you arrive at the arena." With that, she disappeared. Anthony and the 10 challengers appeared in the arena spanning 40 kilometers, and a massive barrier surrendered the arena. When someone loses consciousness or surrenders, they would immediately be teleported out. Anthony stood in their midst thinking of how to fight them. He thought of creating 10 clones and send each to fight a student while he sits down on his throne eating fruits. This should have more effect, he thought, but he shakes his head and dismisses the idea and decided just to fight. Though he won't hold back his punches, but that won't mean he would show all his cards. That would make him predictable, especially against the Forsaken cult. He was ready to have a fight with them. Everyone already brought out their weapons to fight and took their stance waiting on the signal. Anthony smirked at them. After 2 minutes, Vice President's voice sounded begin. Before any of the 10 could attack, Anthony made the first move with his magic he hasn't used since the beginning. He only ever trained on it, but never fought with it. Ice Age. Anthony casted and ice froze everything within a 40-kilometer range to stasis. With Anthony at its center, his figure suddenly blurred, and in less than 1 second, he gave each challenger a devastating punch to the stomach that the ice on each of them shattered on impact. He didn't differentiate between men or women, or between race. He punched everyone with the same force and returned to the center like he never left in the first place. Immediately, he returned to his original position. All 10 of them were sent flying backwards by a terrifying blow, and they all hit the barrier. Some coughed blood upon contact with the barrier. Some stronger ones only coughed out their gut, while those who couldn't even stand a single punch were eliminated as they fell unconscious. The entire arena was silent. They couldn't understand what just happened. For a moment, everyone was frozen. The next, they were all dealt heavy blows, and 3 were directly eliminated. These were people in the top 10, not random people. They clicked their tongues in awe, but remained focused on the match with rapt attention. Rank 11. Snow Landell was eliminated as she fell unconscious. Rank 9. Akeshwood Vale was eliminated. Rank 5. Fair's Fair was eliminated also. 3 powerhouses at the top rank didn't even last 2 seconds. Immediately the fight begun. Anthony stood still in his position with his hands behind his back, waiting for them to recover. 30 seconds later, they all have stood up and wiped their blood and saliva off their mouths. They looked at each other, light flashing their eyes as they couldn't underestimate him anymore. Anthony just stood there smiling and waiting for them to make a move. Terps was the first to make a move. She controlled the blood the rankers just vomited and turned it to 15 swords and sent them towards him. Anthony didn't even move and allowed the sword to reach him. But they all immediately stopped a few meters away from him. The passive skill. Infinity was at work before Anthony could reply to her attack with an attack of his own. Patrick appeared behind him and casted his fire magic, sending flame spears towards him, which also stopped a few. Meters away from him, he smiled at them both and simply said full counter and reflected all attacks back to the caster. Terps and Patrick tried to dodge it immediately. Ryder appeared in front of Anthony and threw a devastating punch towards his chest. Anthony raised his hand and blocked with a finger, standing still like an immovable mountain, but the destruction from the attack broke wind barrier behind Anthony. The entire stadium shook. The barrier cracked but were repaired immediately. dust rose and clouded everyone's vision. Such was the horror of the Titan physique. This shocked Ryder. He was from the Titan race, unrivaled in physical strength in this world. Even the dragons don't compare to them in raw physical strength. Yet this human blocked and tanked his punch with a finger. Anthony was about to make a move, but another person appeared with a sword. It was Conrad who released his sword technique. Lionheart sword technique. Main cleaver. Conrad's sword coated with his pure mana and boosted with fire went straight for Anthony's head. Temperature rose, threatening to devour Anthony whole and reduce him to ashes. Anthony didn't even turn, but raised his second hand and stopped the sword with a finger. Then he broke the sword into shards. Then he turned to Conrad and sent a hard kick to Conrad's head, who was stunned that his rank sword was broken with just a finger flick. The kick landed on his temples, and he was sent flying like a broken kite. Then he lost consciousness immediately. He collided with the barrier and was eliminated. He turned to Ryder, who wanted to step back as he saw Conrad getting eliminated, but before the Titan could make a move, the finger stopping his fist changed to a grip and held his wrist. Anthony lifted Ryder off the ground with ease and proceeded to fling up, smashing him on the ground left and right continuously with an insanely pure strength. Shock waves rocked throughout Ryder's body. His lungs ruptured, and he cougaed up blood from the sheer force of the slam. The Titan automatically disappeared from Anthony's hands. He turned and looked at the rest who hadn't made a move till now. Then he made the first move this time. As these people weren't worth his time, he planned to play a little with them, but it seems they can't play their roles, so he saw no reason to delay any longer. He snapped his fingers. Mana moved, and a massive fire sword 25 feet in height appeared while he appeared above the sword and floated like the vice principal did. He raised his index finger and pointed down, and the fire sword dropped onto the stadium. The rankers frowned and proceeded to bring out whatever defense or attack they could use to survive. Von Bryan hasn't made a move since the fight started. Even when he was punched and hit the barrier, he just stood up without an injury like nothing happened and returned to his original standing position. No one knew what he was thinking, but they didn't ask this time also. He didn't make a move and planned to take the attack head-on like it was a breeze. Blaze Patrick frowned and created a thick fire barrier. Even though he was a phoenix and their lineage came from fire, he wasn't strong enough to be immune to fire just yet. And with the heat the sword emitted, he could tell a huge attack was coming, so he channeled massive amount of mana into the fire barrier and braced for impact. Von Karen also hasn't made a move like this brother Von Bryan. He could see his brother didn't make a move to defend the attack and still planned to take it head-on. But he was not his brother, so he made a barrier out of thick ice that enclosed him, waiting for the attack to land. Stormbringer saw how his brother Ryder was eliminated and sighed, as a Titan being beaten to death with pure physical strength was a shame. He shook his head and activated his art. Body art, titanium body. A massive amount of mana was released from his body. His originally absurd size increased further. His further body hardened like it was made of titanium. He spread his legs wide and shouted to further boast his resolve. As soon as he activated his technique, the fire sword landed. Boom, asterisk boom. Space was ripped apart. The arena was destroyed and incinerated even more. The whole place was on an earthquake. The barrier that was set up to cover the stadium cracked even more than before, like it was about to collapse totally, but was automatically repaired by itself. The 5 remaining students didn't expect the attack to be this big. They had underestimated the attack, and 4 of them were eliminated. Brian and Karen didn't even make a move throughout the entire fight, wanting to challenge Anthony alone on a personal match, as their pride couldn't bring them to stoop so low as to work together with others. Yet they both got eliminated just like that. The Phoenix, Blaze Patrick, who was more in tune with the element than all of them, was caught off guard too. He thought he already make a perfect defense for a spell of that level. He still got eliminated. Bringer's titanium body art couldn't tank the attack and was directly roasted alive. Then he was teleported out before he could die. The only survivor of all this was Tiara, who had teleported into the sky and was stuck there as if she couldn't move or something was holding her in place. Anthony smiled. He already knew this. Tiara was a space elemental user. That's why the vice president wanted her as a disciple. Tiara was a vampire, uses the innate blood control of a vampire, had a royal rank bloodline, and was a space elemental user. There was no one more perfect to the vice president. Tiara survived by teleporting herself to the sky above Anthony, then used the space lock spell to lock herself in place in the sky, so he won't free fall, as she wasn't at the SSS rank yet, so she couldn't fly. Note: Anthony is passing off his flying as a skill. He is limiting himself to A+ rank. Tiara was shocked by the level of carnage and destruction. She didn't expect this at all. If she defended head-on with blood magic, she would have been eliminated. This wasn't an attack a fresher should be able to dish out. It wasn't anyone's fault that they got eliminated from that attack. Their weakens was their mana and elemental control. Anthony's control over mana was too perfect, so the students couldn't read the attack that looked and felt like a normal heart attack that they could defend against with minimal injury. This was basically what the vice principal did. She looked like she was floating. The students sensed no mana fluctuations when she used space magic. It was all their mana control and mana reading skill. It was too low. Anthony landed on the ground after the dust settled and stared at Tiara, who was still locked in space. She stared back at him, then released her space lock magic, landing on the ground with a soft touch like a leaf, instead of like a being that just dropped high from the skies. Such was how good her movements control at least were. It was now time for the final show, time to decide who would sit on the rank 1 seat. VVIP area. If a pin dropped right now, it would be as loud as a drum. Such was the silence that permeates here at this very moment. Everyone was just too surprised to speak. What they have witnessed in a space of 20 minutes between the top 10 was just too much and unthinkable. The dean stared at Null Collins for a second, but that second was too long for someone of their level. Null Collins was busy smiling, though he was shocked he decided not to show that, and just had a smile on his lips as if he always knew his grandson was always that strong. But he was just shocked as everyone. The dean spoke. How did you train your grandson? Such mana control shouldn't be possible for his age. Are you sure he is still human? Such battle sense, as if he has been battling all his life. This is another point. At this rate, would we have anything to teach him? Said the vice president. Collins replied as he kept smiling. My son was the one that trained him since he awakened. I didn't even contribute aside helping him pick a cultivation technique. Asides that only Michael and his wife knows the remaining details, he spoke the truth. But he also lied his son trained his freaky grandson, when he knows nobody trained his grandson as his grandson requested that. But he couldn't just say that out loud, right? He simply just linked his monstrous son to his freakish grandson. As a lion can't birth a dog. The dean and the vice principal just kept quiet and didn't reply. Nobody knew their thoughts. VIP area. Mitchell hasn't reacted since this examination started from round 1, though there was still no expression on her face, but now her heart was beating wildly. She too was a mage and could understand how profound her son's control over the element and mana were, and he came this far without her and her husband help. She was happy for her son's progress, but was sad for not helping or at least teaching anything. Her son already said his physique allowed him to follow his path alone, but at least he should ask questions once in a while, but he didn't. The worst part was she didn't know her son was this good. She was conflicted, happy for her son's progress, but sad for not even helping in any way. Michael was the same as his wife. He was already too shocked from his son's sword abilities in the second round, and now his magic abilities wasn't anything less. He marveled at his son's mana control. He felt he wasn't talented enough compared to his son. He remembered some time ago when his son said he would make his name sound in the academy walls, but he just laughed it off. He sighed, looks like I would have to train harder quickly, so my own son won't be stronger than me. Also, Elle would have to increase security against those cult and other family. After this, I'm sure he is at top of their assassination list. It wasn't that he didn't want his son to surpass him, but he still has his pride as a father and as an awakened. Even if his son surpasses him, he won't let him have his way easily. The other patriarchs were looking at Anthony with different lights, flashing their eyes and minds. If they allowed such a monster to grow, the power balance of the human domain would shift. The other races in the room looked at Michael and Mitchell, only thinking 2 monsters giving birth to a bigger one. Some people from other races just smile, because they knew the other human patriarchs won't let this just slide. They would send assassins or try to suppress him starting from the academy. Such was their human nature. Michael and Mitchell knew what was going through the other patriarchs' minds. They have been through their own share of assassins, as they were both monsters in their own league, but they didn't reply them at this moment because they won't bother scheming and other for revenge. They will just lay waste against whoever it was. Whoever made a move better hide all evidence, because once they got any lead, the human domain would vibrate in the Null family's name. The arena. Anthony and Tiara stood facing each other. Tiara didn't speak. She just stared at him. Anthony smiled and said, "I can tell you have been hungry for the first rank since the very beginning. I don't know why you're so eager, but I will give you 5 minutes. I will battle you in that 5 minutes. If you can't win, I will end the match immediately the 5 minutes passes. Also, if you land a single hit on me, it's my loss." Tiara looked at the arrogant human who made such declaration with the same smile she saw since the beginning of this round. She felt he was looking down on her, but she didn't bother replying him. She simply took out her sword and took a stance and said, "After you." Anthony smiled and took out his katana and looked at her with his deep blue eyes. They both moved at the same time, and their swords met each other, and there was an implosion, but none of them moved. They looked at each other, Anthony still smiling. They crossed swords and sent shockwaves everywhere, and sparks kept flying off as their sword clashed together. They further destroyed the already destroyed arena. They appeared 15 kilometers from their original position. Tiara took a stance and activated a technique. Sword technique, space type, dimensional cleaver. She swung her sword down, leaving a blood-red trail that slashed and moved through space to Anthony's head. Anthony didn't need a sword technique to counter this, but he decided to show his own technique. Endless technique, katana series, space ender. He too released his own space technique and sent it out with a blue trail following behind. Both attacks met and wreaked havoc in space. Space trembled and shattered at their display of power. The surrounding was dyed red and blue as everywhere was destroyed. The arena trembled. The palace of the top 1,000 seated vibrated with intensity. This spoke volumes of their mastery over space, elemental, and sword technique. Both attacks canceled out each. Tiara was surprised that the human possessed the space element. It was also one of the source of her pride. The space element was as the second rarest element, the first being time. She took pride in this. She already speculated that during the exams there won't be more than 2 additional space users amongst the millions of people that took part in the exam, but she didn't even see one throughout the 3rd round. So she assumed she was the only one with the element, but now someone who uses this element stood in front of her, the same person who looked down on her. This took a hit at her pride, but her pride didn't stop her sword, even for milliseconds. Nothing will. And nothing could stop her attacks in a fight. Such was the fruit of her training and experience she has gathered since she was 10. She moved again through the dust that covered the arena to attack the human, taking advantage of that, and slashed her with a sound of blood concentrated the most, the liver. Anthony saw her coming and parried the attack, then countered by cleaving at her neck. She raised her sword and parried, then attacked again. Sword art, Blood Reaper. She slashed at his chest with her sword coated in red hue this time. Anthony simply covered his sword with fire and met her attack head-on. Tiara frowned. For minutes had already passed, but hasn't gained a single lead in this fight or landed a hit. But she wasn't deterred. Before she could make a move, Anthony already made one. Endless technique, katana series, scorching slash. He slashed with his katana covered in fire element towards her stomach. Tiara simply teleported out of his katana range and the attack, but that didn't mean the surrounding didn't bear the brunt of his attack. The ground shook and exploded even more. Stones melted, and the ground turned to lava, with some areas charred. If any normal person was here, they would simply melt from the heat that radiated from the aftermaths of the attack. Tiara looked at Anthony with an expressionless face. Anthony looked back at her with a smile and one hand behind his back, giving off the aura of a veteran. This was no different than child's play to him. Tiara put away her sword and started her next attack with blood and space this time. She brought out a huge amount of blood from her space ring, and they all floated around her like a stream, suspended in the air. She controlled the blood and formed blood ball that kept increasing in size and moving upwards till it covered the entire arena. Tiara's face paled a little as she infused a massive amount of mana in this attack. She then heard teleported appearing above the huge blood ball. Then she casted it as a spell to further increase its damage output, thereby costing more mana. She was really going all out in this attack. Blood magic, blood meteorite, space magic, space lock. She cast it in succession. She sent the attacks downward to the arena. Everyone was shocked by the attack. They could tell that the attack beyond the A rank and already boarded the S rank attack. Anthony admired her battle talent. She casted space on him, so he won't simply teleport above the attack, just like she did, but where was in fun in that? Anthony smiled at this. She was right. She did make a good decision by locking up with space lock magic, but she underestimated his control over the space element. He simply controlled mana and took over the spell and disabled it. This was one of the advantages of mana control. If you have much higher mana control than your opponent, then you could just take over their spell or cancel it if you have the same element as them. This is what Anthony did. He just took over the mana and element, thereby taking over the spell. As the attack dropped with might and speed, he took a stance and activated a technique. Endless technique, katana series, frozen slash. He covered his katana in ice element and slashed upwards, releasing a thick cold trail towards the blood world. The attack split the blood world in perfect half and froze it. Then he snapped his fingers, then the frozen halves exploded, releasing thin snowflakes and snow around, which froze everything in the arena. The arena that was already lava, like a volcano, changed forms again to a frozen land. It was a beautiful sight to behold. Tiara released her space lock that was suspending her and landed on the ground weakly. She already spent all her mana. She breathed heavily as she stared at Anthony, the snow landing on her body as she stood there panting heavily and was slowly losing consciousness due to using up every single drop of mana she had left. She sighed and said, "It's my loss." With that, they were both teleported out of the arena and appear where the remaining students sat, directly appearing on their own seat. A professor appeared in front of the students and started speaking. "Congratulations to all that were able to climb the rank. All of you have been briefed by the vice president about the wristwatch. Follow me. I will lead you into the academy inner area." As they walked, he continued speaking. "The top 20 rank would be put in the class called S class, while the rest of you will be shuffled randomly between class A, B, C, with 245 people in each class. Your wristwatches will be updated, and you'll be able to see your courses and the scheduled time." As they walked, they got to a huge gate, and the professor stopped and greeted the man standing there. "Are these the new students? It's a golden generation indeed." The man spoke as he scanned through the students. The professor leading them smiled at him, then turned to the students and said, "Take out everything in your space ring aside. Only one weapon you will continue using, and your clothes and life-saving items should be left with you." The students frowned. A student raised his hand and said to the professor, "Sir, why are we bringing them out, sir?" The professor said with an evil smirk, "Nothing is allowed in the academy aside from your clothes and one weapon and life-saving items provided by your families. Everything else would be confiscated no matter what it is and returned to your family, be them artifact or potions. The school will provide everything for you, no matter what you want it sold in the academy." There were a few murmur amongst the students. The professor continued, "What do you think your academy points was for? Everything in the academy can only be gotten with points no matter what it is. Everything here costs points. The only free thing here are your living rooms and classes. Even food here costs point. So those of you that lost your point will be starting with nothing." The students were stunned. All those who lost their points cursed and were discontented. How could they have known? Then another student asked, "Sir, how do we obtain points?" The professor smiled and said, "Through completing mission, doing well in class. Points can also be transferred to another student, so you can borrow or have another person gift you. Well, you could challenge your classmates to a match with points or any other thing as the bet. But that's if they agree. If you challenge a higher level person and win, you get the number of points you bet on, but not their rank." Then they all submitted everything in their space rings. Anthony only submitted the throne he always sat on. As everyone has already seen it, he might as well bring it out. People were surprised he brought out nothing more. The professor looked at him, then scanned Anthony's space ring and saw only clothes were there and nodded. Then he scanned all students' body and space ring to make sure they didn't smuggle any potion or anything. Then they all moved into the academy. They all looked around and saw high-rising buildings. The mana density was higher than that outside. They all looked at the new site, but those who grew in luxury didn't even have a change in expression, and they just continued walking. They walked for a while and arrived at a tall building, and the professor said, "This is the hostel. Every year have their own hostel. Your room number should already be in your watch. School starts tomorrow at 8 a.m. Another student asked, "Sir, is attending class compulsory?" The professor looked at him and replied, "No, it's not, but with each absence you lose a base of 100 points, and your professor could decide to increase it to a maximum of 1,000. Then the professor disappeared like the wind. The top 10 frowned, since all of them already lost their points to Anthony. They all turned their gazes towards him, but he didn't care. He just started walking toward the hostel building, ignoring all their gazes as he made his way towards his room. He got into the elevator and pressed the button of the top floor. When he got to the top floor, he walked straight to room with the number 1 on it. He opened the door and entered, then set the passcode for the door. He looked around and smiled. This was better than all 5-star back on Earth. The mana here increased again and was higher here than outside. He had a spacious room with a bathroom, a kitchen, a parlor, a training room, and a balcony he could just relax at. This was too luxurious. People who weren't rich would lose themselves here and forget their purpose. He went straight to the bathroom and showered. All basic necessities that are in a house were already provided. He came out of the bathroom with a towel around his waist with his hair wet. He stood at the window and looked out the window, thinking of how he trained for 5 years, and he has finally stepped into the world. He changed his clothes to pajamas and sat on the table eating steak as he started making his next plans. Then he remembered the guy who cursed him. He simply activated Poison Body and created a poison that would kill any being that uses chaos regardless of their race, and made it undetectable and traceless. A liquid appeared on his palm. He looked at the colorless poison, then transferred it to a bottle, then opened a portal and threw the poison into the portal. In a different location, in a room that reeked of chaos, a portal suddenly opened, and a bottle flew and fell from the portal, and the portal closed. The bottle dropped on the coffin and broke, and its content permeated the coffin and touched the man sleeping inside, entering the skin. A few seconds later, the man died without even waking up from his slumber. He died in his sleep. Anthony looked at all this with his all-seeing eyes, then nodded that the enemy was gone. He didn't want to waste his time going there to talk rubbish or trade blows and sword with someone that was a deathbed, and death was inevitable. He just needed to make the inevitable already, as no one knows if the man could spring out water of life or something like that out of nowhere. Anthony has read a lot of novel and watched animes. He won't let anyone grow or will give them time to breathe. If he could kill you without leaving any evidence linking to him, he would kill you immediately. He then opened a portal again and called out, "Baru." A shadow came out from his shadow and bowed, "My liege." Anthony, order. Head to the location the portal leads to. Search it and bring anything of value, and bring back the space ring on the corpse. Then he tossed him another space ring. Baru didn't ask what space ring or where the portal lead to. He simply stepped into the portal to take care of his master's order. After 5 minutes, Baru came back with the coffin, the space rings with a weird stone, and said, "My liege, these are the only things of value." The stone looked ordinary, but it was in his vault, so I brought it. Anthony looked at the stone for a while and put it aside for now. He looked at the 2 space rings and saw a huge amount of high-grade mana crystals. The man was very rich. Now Anthony forgave him for cursing him. He activated the authority of information, but the only thing he could find out was a fruit was inside. His authority was too low to find out more. He stored it and all the mana crystals in his inventory. He was rich now, though he could get mana crystals from his infinite resource system. That would wasting his spending limit. He slept off happily where he dreamt of spending all his hard-earned money. Anthony woke up exactly 6 a.m. He went through his normal morning routine of bathing, dressing, and admiring himself. He went to the living room and sat on a couch. He looked at his watch and went through it. He saw the list of classes he had to take and their schedules through the week. He takes the mana and element control, history, demonology, which is study of demons, and beast, weapon class. He brushed through the school rules, which were basically simple. A student can't kill another student no matter the reason on academic ground. They can only challenge them and take it out on the battle arena. Points are basically everything here. Everything here costs point, be it eating, drinking, every single thing costs point. Even read books in the library cost points, only some basic books are free. The only free things here are the living quarters provided by the school and the classes. Aside those, nothing else. This was to make students work harder for everything and not make them lazy. Anthony could understand the lazy part. With the luxury here, if he was reincarnated in a normal or poor family, he too might be tempted to laze around for a few weeks. There was no status here. The only status here is the strength decides that nothing else. Can't talk it out, then fight it out. The academy wasn't built to raise greenhorns who knew not the horrors of the world. He also saw that although missing classes and coming late cost points, you can actually leave classes and points won't be deducted by taking a mission which grants a permit for that particular amount of day stipulated to the mission. No professor of any level can overturn this permit. Only the dean and vice president has such power, and failing any mission also costs twice as much as the reward points. This was to prevent students from taking mission to leave the academy and skip classes without being kept in check, and also to prevent some from sending themselves to death. Those whose points falls to a particular level in the minus range would be expelled. He also read through many rules, but they were all normal academy rules, so there wasn't much to say on them. He looked at the time and saw it was already 7:30 a.m., and he had mana control class by 8 a.m. He opened a map function on the watch and left his room heading for his class, as he didn't want to be late on his first class. He walked for around 10 minutes and arrived at the class door, which was closed with a writing on wall above the door S1, which simply meant the S rank class of the first year. He simply opened the door with mana, without even lifting his hands, and walked into the class with his one hand in his pocket as he walked. He looked around the class as he walked and saw everyone was already present, and he was the last person. All 19 looked at him as he walked, some remembering their loss, some remembering they gave him free points. They all had different thoughts. Anthony simply walked with his footsteps echoing in a room as he took a seat at the back of the class. He looked at the time, which said 7:41 a.m. Since there was still time, he simply crossed his leg, folded his arms on his chest, and closed his eyes waiting for the professor to arrive. All professor here were strong, and even the lowest were at least Grandmaster rank. This alone spoke volumes on the strength of the academy. The professor were ranked on stars, from 1 star to 4 star. Each extra single star was like the difference between the heavens and the world, and spoke volumes of the level of strength possessed in the academy. As Anthony was resting, someone started laughing and walked up to him with a steady stride. As he arrived in front of Anthony, he stopped laughing and smiled and said, "My name is Stormbringer, ranked 6th, and that big idiot over there is my brother, is Storm Rider, ranked 8th. He stretched out his hands as soon as he finished speaking for a handshake. Anthony opened his eyes and looked at him and smiled and said, "No, Anthony. Nice to meet you, Stormbringer," as he shook Bringer's hands. Bringer said, "Everyone already knows your name. There was no need for the introduction." Anthony looked at this tall freak who stood at 6 feet 7 inches at the age of 15, wondering what this boy was fed. All his muscles were simply bulky and bulging out, as if even the clothes was the only things trying to hold them back. Anthony released his hands from Bringer's firm grip and said, "I've never actually met or talked to any other race before. You're the first." Bringer replied, "No big deal, but I've met a lot of human during my training and whenever I come out." Bringer wanted to continue, but Anthony said, "We have only a minute left. You should return to your seat before the professor arrives." Bringer looked at his watch and nodded, then turned around and returned to his seat and sat beside his brother Ryder. Ryder said, "Brother, why did you talk to the human?" Bringer replied, "He is strong, and I only respect the strong." Ryder sighed at his brother's replied, "Brother, can you stop being all brawls for once? Besides, Father specifically warned us about the humans, that they are as cunning as the demons." Bringer simply shook his head and didn't reply. The door opened and a man walked in. He had a blood-red hair with red eyes and a handsome face, and emitted a dense aura. On his left chest was a badge with 4 stars on it. The man walked with steady but powerful steps and had everyone entranced by his mere presence. The man arrived on a podium, which was in front of the class, that had a table and a chair. The man looked around, his eyes sharp as if piercing through all veils and other to see their secrets. He scrutinized everyone head to toe, then his red eyes landed on Tiara and stayed a nanosecond longer. No other person noticed. His gaze landed on Anthony, trying to see it all and what was about him. His skill, the perfect one, notified him about someone trying to get information about him. Anthony didn't plan to produce a fake information. Rather, he blocked the man's ability, totally making it not work on him, making the man get nothing from him. The man looked at Anthony for 2 seconds with red eyes, and Anthony looked back at him with bright blue eyes. Their eyes met as they stared as if sending off red and blue sparks. They both, though, at the same time, he has special eyes. Other students didn't notice this as they were still in a trance from the man's aura. The man turned his gaze away from Anthony and looked at the other students who were in a daze. A golden generation indeed, he thought as he finished seeing through all of them, but the corner of his eyes was still on a student who wasn't in a trance like his classmates. His presence will help her push herself more, he thought, as he looked at Tiara. My name is Rave Kevin, a vampire, and I will be your homeroom professor this year. His voice brought them all out of their states, and they didn't perceive anything wrong. In case you are already guessing, yes, I am the Vice President Junior Brother. Then he brought out 20 badges from his space's rings that had this one written on it, and he used mana to give one to each student. Then he continued speaking. These badges are for recognition. Only the S class gets one. The other classes don't get one. You are required to wear this badge at all times on your chest, aside when you return to your hostel. The badge gives 1,000 points from rank 20 to rank 11 monthly. Then from rank 10 to rank 2 receives 3,000 points monthly. Then rank 1 receives 5,000 points monthly. In case any of you manage to climb the rank, you get the monthly corresponding point. As he spoke, their watches beeped as they all received points. Anthony already had over 20,000 points, and with this new points added, it climbed to 31,000. The points given to the top 20 might seem much, but when they start paying for every single thing, they would understand just expensive things are. Everyone here came from a rich family and knew nothing of saving or managing or the importance of money. But here they would learn. Anthony felt they were about to suffer like he did in his past life. Constant working to pay for this or pay for that. He almost laughed. Anthony felt he hardly needs to spend his points on himself. His system has everything, and his bloodline and physique provides knowledge. So there was nothing to spend points on, but that doesn't mean he won't amass it. It was still a resource other needs and can act as source of payment or bribe. So he might need it later, so it's better to have as much as possible. The vampire professor spoke again. Our first class this morning is about mana control. That would be the first thing I would teach you is mana control is connected to everything. Even the simplest move that requires the lowest mana can be deadly in another person's hand that has better mana control. He looked around and said, as everyone knows all race of cores where mana is stored, be them monsters or other races or demon. Now what's the differences between the cores? Some people raised their hands, some didn't. It was a simple question that everyone knows the answer to, but the professor was using it to build and connect with the students. Then he said to them, there's no need to raise your hand here. Once I ask a question, I will randomly pick a rank from 1 to 20, and the person on that rank would have to answer to their best of their knowledge. Then he said, rank 19, and an elf named Joseph Woodvale immediately answered. The demon cores are pure pitch black because they use chaos instead of mana, while other races and monsters have blue core, cause we use mana. When the demons and other races die, their cores dissipates into the environment upon death, leaving only their corpse and a small amount of mana present. But beasts, when killed, still possess their core. The vampire professor said, 50 points for your answer. Now our mana path follow a general way. When we cultivate and when we move our mana, the mana someone emits can tell you what element they use. But that is only if you have better mana control and element control of said element than the person in question. Now who can explain the general mana flow and path of all of us, as we all have similar method? He looked around and said rank 1. All eyes turned to Anthony, who was busy looking outside the window. Though he was looking outside the window, he was still listening. He gazed at all of them who looked at him and sighed at how he was wasting his time. Well, not like he had anything better to do. He snapped his fingers, and one human-shaped blue lines with a stone-like thing in its lower abdomen appeared in the air above everyone, and tiny dots of blue particles of light floated around together with other 5 bright particles floated around the entire classroom, which was very beautiful and had a certain serenity to it. Anthony had created all of this with illusion magic. He spoke after creating such a scene. We all cultivate by drawing in mana in the surrounding to our cores to further solidify and increase its size, and other to increase the amount of mana we can hold. As he spoke, the human-shaped blue lines followed his words as he spoke, and the stone-like thing in the abdomen, which was the core, started to absorb the blue dots particle from the air, which was also made out of illusion as the representation of mana. Anthony spoke as the illusion demonstrated. The core absorbs the mana in the environment till we are saturated. That's when we make a breakthrough. For swordmen, they go through same process but use the mana from the core to nourish the body, basically making it stronger. As we increase our mana and mana control, elements starts to interact with us more and more. The 5 other illusion of bright particles of different light moved around the human-shaped lines as the human-shaped illusion cultivated. The elements bounce and dance around our body. Depending on how much affinity we have with them, people can conceal their element with precise mana and element control, which conceals which element is interacting with someone, giving someone the illusion that it's just mana. The whole class was stupefied by his show and were shocked that he knew illusion magic. The vampire professor smiled and said, 1,000 points for your display, 300 for your answer. What a monster, he thought. Even though he couldn't see through Anthony, that alone was enough to qualify him as a monster, cause no student has ever escaped his eyes, and no one knew about his special eyes aside his sister. Even his clan doesn't know, and now the boy who possessed either the same eyes or a different one, but just as powerful, found out about it. He personally knew how absurd his eyes were. That's why in the world only his sister. The Blood Empress knew of this, and now he had been caught by a 15-year-old kid. He didn't know whether to cry or laugh. The class continued until the alarm rang, signifying the end. The professor looked at the students and said, "The class is over." He looked at Tiara and said, "Rank 2, follow me immediately," he said as he walked out without even waiting for Tiara to reply. As they both left, the remaining students looked at them with strange eyes. Anthony guessed that the vampire professor was leading her to the vice president, in order to accept Tiara as a disciple. This would soon shock many people, as the Blood Empress refused to accept any disciple, as she always said their talent wasn't enough to satisfy her. It seems many people from various races would soon come to curry favor with Tiara, thought Anthony, as this didn't have anything to do with him. Tiara followed behind the professor as they walked without speaking. She wanted to ask what he needed from her, but she kept quiet. They walked for quite a while before they arrived at a large door with intricate design. This was the vice president office. Kevin said, "Wait here," to Tiara. Without even turning or asking for her approval, he simply just entered the room by pushing the door slightly. Kevin saw his sister looking at the students as they went about their lives through the window of her office. She turned to her brother and asked, "How was your first class?" Kevin sighed and replied, "It went well. You know this, you should ask what you really want to ask." The vice president smiled. "How are they? Are they monsters and golden generation is said?" Kevin replied, "They are indeed monsters. More than any other generation, the academy would get interesting." "What about the human boy and Tiara?" asked the Blood Empress. "Tiara has a very high potential. Enough potential to reach your level if she is allowed to grow and not die midway, and able to take a step further if she overcomes all odds with the help of her royal level bloodline and space element. She would be your perfect student you always dreamed of. As for the human boy, I really don't know. My eyes couldn't see through him. He also possessed special eyes like me, but I don't know if it's same eyes as mine or different, but whichever one it is, they remain powerful regardless. He blocked me from seeing anything about him, and he found out I also possess special eyes. But all I can say is that he's the only one I can call a monster and call the rest geniuses," said Kevin. The Blood Empress tapped her fingers on the table with perfect rhythm and sighed. If he wasn't from a null family, I would have considered him as a disciple. He is space element too. I'm sure that grumpy old grandfather of his would be the first to disagree, she said. Kevin then stood up and said, well, you can talk to your new disciple. I will take my leave first. Then he disappeared from the room. Immediately he left. Tiara was immediately teleported into the office by the Blood Empress. Tiara looked around and saw the vice president sitting at her desk. She immediately bowed and greeted. Terps, Tiara greets the Blood Empress. How are your days going in the academy? Are things to your liking? Asked the vice president. Yes, they are. I've adjusted well to the environment, and I'm already making plans for my training schedule, Tiara replied. No need to be so tensed. Do you know why I called you here? Asked the vice principal. Tiara thought for a while and couldn't see any reason, but she still replied. Because I lost to the human boy. This was the only answer she could come up with. It was better to say this than say nothing at all. The vice president shook her head and said, It isn't because of that. Even if you fight him again, you will still lose. Tiara frowned. She knew this too, as she had personally fought with everything and still lost miserably. That didn't mean she was throwing in the towel. She would crush him 6 months from now during the midterms. The vice president smiled and said, How about you become my disciples? Tiara's mind went blank for a second or two. She really didn't see this coming. Being disciple of the world-renowned Blood Empress was too good of an opportunity to pass up. It will help her in many different ways, and she will be the disciple of someone who even turned down world-level genius in the past who are now powerhouses presently. The vice president continued, speaking with a smile on her beautiful face and red eyes. You have the royal-level bloodline and the space element, which I possess, which I can teach you on. You also use the sword, which I could also teach you on, and you're a vampire, I can still teach you, and help increase your blood control level. The vice president didn't need to say all this. She was just simply speaking. If she said she wanted only a disciple in name, without teaching anything or passing her technique or legacy, people would still flock to her, as her name alone was enough to accomplish a lot. Tiara bowed, saying, Disciple greets master. The vice president smiled and said, You can go back and come find me once every week on Saturday. Your training will only be from Saturday to Sunday. I could increase it more, but that will hinder you. Everyone has their path and ways. If I made you into a carbon copy of me, then forget reaching any level above me, as you won't be able to even reach my level. Then she threw a space ring to Tiara and said, There's a new cultivation manual inside. Switch to it immediately you get back. Though the one you are using is good enough, but for someone at her level it isn't enough, and there are a few resources inside the ring. Then she snapped her fingers, and a portal appeared under Tiara's feet as she fell inside it, and the vice president's voice sounded in her head. This portal leads to your room. See you on Saturday, my dear disciple. With that, the portal closed. The vice president smiled as she has finally gotten a disciple she has really longed for. Then she raised her eyebrows, suddenly looking around with her senses as if trying to sense something, and said, Is someone spying on me? Is it the dean? Well, he would think of accepting his own disciple now I have mine, she smiled. Even the dean, known as the slaughterer, didn't have a disciple. His standards were just as high as the vice president's. Anthony's room. Anthony was sitting down on the chair in his balcony with a juice in his hands, staring at the sky, but he was really spying on the vice president. When he returned to his room, he sat down, activated the all-seeing eyes, and watched everything that happened in real time between Kevin and the vice president, and also Tiara being accepted as a disciple. It seems the vice president can sense me. I better not spy too much or I risk getting caught next time. I shouldn't spy on the dean because I will get caught for sure. I would have to keep breaking through to increase the strength and power of my eyes. He thought as he deactivated them, as soon as the vice president started sensing his gaze. Tomorrow would be the weapon training class. I wonder how that will go, he muttered to himself. He stood up and went back into his room as he was going to lie down on his bed. He has decided to rest for a week before he throws himself back into training. I have been training for 5 years without rest. I deserve this rest. Not like a week would make a difference to my current prowess. He gave himself an excuse to sleep off without training. Anthony yawned and stretched as he rose from his bed. He looked at the time, which read 7:19 a.m. He shook his head as he thought, It seems my work habit of waking up on time followed me in my new life. Though he was already at the SSS rank and didn't need sleep, that doesn't mean he won't. Since the weapon class is scheduled to hold by 2 p.m. in the afternoon, I will just surf the school web and look at what the school sells and walk around the school. He gets off the bed and only brushed and washed his face, then headed to the living room, turned on the television, switched to a random channel, and started to press his phone, surfing the school web and looking at the things they sell. What he saw surprised him. The school did sell everything as they did say, all types of weapons, wands, resources from all profession, minerals, strange fruits, and anything that wasn't really rare. They even sold cars. There were also other links in the school website that sold other things like cultivation manual, technique manual, art manual, even beast if you're a tamer. They literally had everything that could be sold. Everything was about points. Some things need points and position of power like the star-level professor in order to buy them. So even if a student manages to gather points from other students and missions, they won't be able to buy something's too high above their rank. Even professor couldn't buy things to give to students or students buying things to give to other students. Once you buy something, you will sign a mana contract to use said item for yourself. There was no gifting here in this school. You have to work for everything with your own hands. Some people who graduate from the academy work for the academy after signing a contract with them, thereby increasing their work rank and mana rank. It was all possible with points and hard work. Anthony looked at the time, 8:15 a.m. It seems time becomes slower once you have nothing to do. No wonder some people in my previous life said time was relative, he thought. Then he picked up the television remote to switch to a different channel this time. But before he could even press any button, he heard a knock on the door. Anthony raised an eyebrow and wondered who was knocking. He had no friends or colleagues or acquaintances here, which made him wonder who was knocking. He stood up and arrived at the door and opened it where he saw a male elf. The elf was stunned when he saw Anthony because Anthony was too handsome. He stared at Anthony for some time before he cleared his throat and started speaking. Hello, I'm a member of the student council. The top 3 was supposed to come to the student council meeting, but none of you showed up. The student council president sent me to invite you call in case you all don't know. Anthony looked at the elf. Then he nodded and said, You can come in, senior. I would have to freshen up before we proceed. You can wait in the living room. The elf simply nodded and entered Anthony's living room and sat down. Anthony said to the elf, I will be done in 10 minutes. Then he left the bath. Anthony bathed and dressed up in front of the mirror, admired himself a little. He smiled and turned. He arrived in the living room and told the elf he was ready, and they left his living quarters together. They arrived at Tiara's door. The elf knocked and informed her of same thing as he already did with Anthony. Tiara simply followed, as she was already ready. The same happened at the rank 3 room. The rank 3 ranker was a dragon named Von Brian. The elf led them as they walked to the students' council area. Anthony didn't talk to any of them, but Tiara and Brian were looking at him through the corner of their eyes. But Anthony's steps didn't falter, his demeanor emperor, like with a gentle aura of authority around him. They arrived at the student council area. The elf opened the door, and they walked in. Their gaze met a round table where people of various race sat and looked at them. Anthony just entered the room and stood in front of them where everyone could see him together with Tiara and Brian standing beside him. The elf simply went and stood behind an elven woman. Then a male dragon who was sitting at the head table said, My name is Von Hines, the student president of the student council. To my left is Vivian Drywood, an elf. To my right is Kai Titan. They're both the vice student president. I see you already met my little baby brother Brian, he said, looking at Brian. I'm not a baby anymore, elder brother, Brian said with a stern face. Hines simply smiled, then turned to Tiara and said, It's nice to see you, Miss Tiara, the royal rank bloodline holder. I couldn't believe you rank above my brother who has been praised since birth. I wonder how long you can keep your rank. Then he turned to Anthony. I have never heard a human hold the first rank since the beginning of the academy. It seems like there's a first for everything. I also wonder how long you can keep your rank. I've always heard your father was a monster who rivaled us, and even went toe-to-toe with the dragon who ranked first during his time and never lost against anyone. But even he still didn't get the first rank. I wonder how much of a monster you are compared to the tales of your father. Anthony simply looked at Hines, who was already SS, but didn't graduate when the requirement to graduate was SS rank. Maybe he hasn't met other criteria, Anthony thought. Then he put on a smile and said, Do you have anything against me being the first rank? There is nothing against you being the first. The world has always been whoever has the biggest fist is right. I'm happy my brother is ranked third, so he can curb his ego and work harder. At least with you and Tiara here, he can feel pressure and improve more. Even if he manages to climb above you and take the first rank, I'm sure he would still work harder, because once he slips, I'm sure you would be there to take back your spot. Hines replied, well, that's by the way, you were called here to be asked if you want to join the student council. The top 3 of the new year are given chance to join. Of course, other people can join by requesting, but that is if we accept. There are many benefits of joining the student council. We as an organization rival the power of a 2-star professor, which means can buy things limited to a 2-star professor, but not individually, but as an organization, like I said. Then you will receive monthly points and other benefit I rather not list. You don't have to accept now, but you have to make your decision in a week. Anthony thought for a while. He didn't really need the points or anything or want to attend useless meetings. The so-called purchasing power was again something he didn't need. He simply didn't see any benefit from joining them other than for connection, in which once again he didn't care about, as power in itself will bring connection to your doorstep. He looked at Hines and said, I declined, but thanks for the offer. Hines was shocked cause he was sure Anthony would accept. Then he laughed. Vivian, who hasn't spoken since they entered the hall, said, it seems you are a tough one, huh? I didn't see that coming. Kai also said, human are rare in the council, since you people hardly match our inheritance, but if you are afraid you would be bullied, then I can be your backer here. Anthony shook his head and replied them, I am not afraid of anyone. The council looks like something that would require a lot of meetings and stuff. I only have time to cultivate and practice, so I won't be here for anything. Hines looked at Anthony for a while, then shifted his gaze to Tiara, waiting for her answer. I would decline. I also only have time to cultivate and train, she replied with a straight face. This is the first time fresher rankers have rejected joining the student council. Are we that low in your eyes? Hines said while releasing his aura with mild, killing intent in it. The room temperature dropped. Tiara and Brian also dropped on their knees, but Anthony simply stood there smiling at Hines and said with a teasing chuckle, I didn't know even student council president bullies students. This is a new sight. Indeed, you have broadened my horizon. I was indeed right not joining. Tiara and Brian were kneeling on the floor sweating when Hines then increased his aura and killing intent. Then blood leaked from their mouth as they struggled to stay conscious. Anthony smiled at all this with amusement. While not even bothering to fake being affected at the slightest, he was simply waiting for their next movement. If anyone attacks, he won't mind put 1 or 2 in their place. Hines, that's enough. They're new students and have the right to reject, Kai said. Hines sighed and stopped, then apologized with a smile on his face. It seems I went too far, I apologize. It's just that no top 3 ranker has never rejected the student council, and both of you doing that during my reign puts a dent on my record. Did you have to drag me into this too? Brian said while getting up and cleaning the blood off his mouth. You were simply standing together with them. Don't cry over small things, Hines replied. Brian wanted to retort, but kept quiet. You may return, Hines said. Anthony simply smiled and teleported back to his room without replying. Anthony appeared in his room and sighed and said to himself while lying down on the couch, what a headache. Should I just kill him and end the drama before it starts? No, he hasn't done anything yet, but he better shouldn't. He raised his hand and checked the time and saw it was almost time for weapon training class. He entered the bathroom and bathed again, changed clothes, then he left for the class. As he walked, he met Tiara on the way. He just walked by her without even speaking to her. Even she didn't speak to him. She just looked at him, wondering why he wasn't affected by the aura and killing intent Hines released earlier. Anthony walked for a while before arriving at a door, which he just pushed and entered. He saw the largest space he has ever seen in his life in the place. The place spanned a gigameter alone. Anthony didn't understand this concept. This was a freaking 1 million kilometers. He simply shook his head and told himself to stop comparing this world to his previous one. It seems his assumption of the blue planet being 200 times bigger might be wrong. It seems it was actually way bigger than that. He looked around and saw other students already there waiting. Then he saw someone waving at him from a distance. It was Stormbringer, who was standing WIT and his twin brother Stormrider. Anthony walked up to them and said, I thought if you both used fist, what are you both doing here? Shouldn't you be somewhere else where they teach about fist? Ryder looked at him and said, Who said Titans only used fist and can't use weapons? Anthony looked at him and said, I remember you attacking with fist before, that's why I asked. Bringer simply replied with pride filled in his voice, We are Titans, we can use fist and any other weapon we like. Unlike others who has to master the craft of one weapon, we Titan can master any fist with extreme ease because of our body, and we can then learn any weapon. So what weapon do you both use then? He asked. Thought he could find out with his eyes if he wanted to. We both use sword, replied Ryder. Anthony looked at them and said with a smirk, You both are identical. You sword, same height. I hope you both don't use the same sword and fist techniques, cause someone just needs to fight one of you, then he automatically can counter both of you. Bringer's face turned ugly immediately. Ryder looked at Anthony with shock. Then Ryder sighed and replied, We indeed used same technique at first, but our teacher said the same thing you said, so we changed and we both used different techniques. Anthony raised an eyebrow and thought their teacher must be another old man who can scheme in his sleep. As the trio continued talking, the professor arrived and walked to their front. Anthony looked at the man's left chest, but didn't see any badge or any star on it. My name is Klaus. I'm a proud human. I'm not a professor here or work here or anything. I only came here because I owe the dean a favor, and he spent the favor to teach you green worms called Golden Generation who will soon know the way the world works. That's why I don't have a badge or star. I will be teaching you only for 2 years, and I'm gone. Some of you might be wondering why different people are here, like the Archer Group and Dagger. That's because I will be teaching you all at once since I'm a unique class holder called the Weapon Master, which basically means I have peak talent on every single weapon you can think of. And I have trained on every single one of them for years before even your parents were born. So you all will be taught by me for 2 years unless I deem you not needing my lessons anymore. Oh, and you can skip my class if you want. I won't deduct points as I won't be forcing anybody to learn. So feel free to die on the battlefield full of regrets. And there are no exams in my class, so like I said, feel free to miss all 2 years. He said with a smile like it was threat. Now each of you select an opponent and fight each other with your weapons only. No mana or element or art or technique. Nothing should be used. Only use your weapon to fight or body to those of you who use your body. I want to see how solid your foundations are. Some people don't even have a good foundation and just go straight to learning techniques. If you foundation are crap, how can you show the real power behind your technique? So begin this spar immediately. Klaus looked at all of them as they each chose their partner while thinking. So this is the so-called Golden Generation. There are a lot of golden eggs here indeed. Their mana ranks are off the charts. They won't stay long here before they graduate. Well, let's see what the so-called Golden Generation have in their weapon. He simply floated in the air looking at each of them from above. Anthony wanted to challenge either of the Stormbothers, but they challenged themselves. It seems they have a rivalry going on between them. Anthony looked around wondering who to challenge, but someone arrived and stood in front of him and said, I choose you. It was Von Brian the Dragon. Anthony looked at him quietly. He didn't have any impression on this guy. During the 3rd round, he didn't attack Anthony because he wanted to fight him one-on-one. It seems now he has another chance to do that. Anthony looked Brian and smiled, then said, I accept your challenge. Brian nodded, then went to a corner and sat down waiting for their turn. The spar went on and on. Tiara was challenged by Blaze Patrick of Phoenix, who was ranked 4th in the S class, but he lost to Tiara. It wasn't even a match as the gap between them was huge. It seems he didn't train his weapon with dedication. Then Klaus announced that it was Anthony's turn, and it was the last round. Those who were tired, everyone still looked at them to see the match between rank 1 and rank 3. Although everyone already saw Anthony defeating the entire top 10. But this time it will be different. It was without mana or element and techniques. They wanted to see just how far his depths are. Anthony smiled and walked to an empty battle arena and took out his katana. He has decided to use katana throughout his journey in the academy. Brian took out his saber while releasing thick battle intent. Although it was already said this was a spar and couldn't use mana or techniques, he didn't plan on going easy on Anthony. He wanted to see what made the human sit at rank 1. Though he already lost during the 3rd round, he didn't count that as he didn't make a move then and tanked everything with pure physique. He had pure confidence, as the dragon physique isn't something humans can match, though there are some humans who awaken some unique physique or bloodline, but they are extremely rare. Brian took a stance, immediately waiting for the signal to begin while looking at Anthony like a predator who has just seen a prey. Anthony didn't even take a stance. He simply smiled while looking at Brian, wanting to see just how good this guy is to have such pride in his strength. They didn't have to wait long as they heard Klaus' voice in their ears from above. Begin. Brian moved immediately. The signal was given, slashing at Anthony's neck. Anthony parried the attack with one hand and the other behind his back. Brian moved again, cleaving at his chest. Anthony once again parried like it was child's play, but this time he counterattacked and thrust at Brian's heart. Brian turned by sidestepping, using the momentum to cut vertically at Anthony's hand, which he blocked. Anthony smiled at Brian, and they both immediately increased their speed and strength. Clank, clank, asterisk, 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 clank, asterisk, 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 boom, asterisk, 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 boom, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The katana and saber collided, leaving explosion as they moved with pure physical strength, countering each other with new moves. Ravines were created as they moved. Dust rose as they clashed. The entire arena was destroyed, but it didn't stop them. Air seemed to be split apart with each attack. The already destroyed arena seemed to disintegrate under their sheer force. They only left streaks of light as they moved at speeds that broke the sound barrier. They were too fast to even leave after images. Anthony appeared behind Brian and slashed 100 times in a second with speed that many students won't even match, even if they enhance their body with mana. Brian, refusing to give up, increased his speed and parried all attacks and countered by slashing at his waist. Anthony simply jumped and landed on the tip of Brian's saber like he was weightless. Brian looked at him with a frown, wondering how he did that without any movement technique, but he didn't delay his actions. He withdrew his saber to bring down Anthony, but before he could, Anthony already backflipped and landed a distance away. He looked at Brian, who was sweating but had a steady breath, and said, "I've matched you for 5 minutes now. If this is your best, then you better end it here. I would be taking up a notch from here. You might lose a limb or two." "Don't look down on me, human," Brian replied, while taking caution to what Anthony said. "Since I arrived at this academy, I have been called human countless times like it is my name. Although I'm proud to be human, but that's not my name. But I guess at the end of the day, only power will imprint my name in your mind and soul." Anthony blurred and appeared in front of Brian and swung his sword with pure force. Brian reacted late, but he still blocked, but he was sent flying like a cannonball, tumbling on the ground. Then he turned around and balanced himself, skidding on the ground as he regained balance. He looked at Anthony. But the Anthony he saw was only an afterimage. The real Anthony already swung his katana 100 times at Brian, creating 100 cuts on Brian's body, but his dragon body helped reduce damage, but that didn't reduce the pain he felt. Brian immediately tried to counter by thrusting at Anthony's left eye, but Anthony ducked and slammed the sword hilt on Brian's gut as he coughed blood, and he was sent flying, breaking wind barrier as he was sent flying backwards. The crowd watching could barely even follow their movements. Only a selected few could barely see their movements with such speed. Is this guy still human? Was he brought from a lab as a trump card? When did such a monster appear in the human race? Isn't the human race too fierce this time? Yeah, they even have up to 6 people in the top 20 this time around. Brian stood up. He was dizzy. He has lost a lot of blood, his bones fractured with ribs broken from the intensity of Anthony's successive attacks, but he refused to give up. Anthony just stood there looking at Brian. The dragon's vitality is truly absurd. A human would be out cold by now, if not dead, he thought as he shook his head. Then he took a step and appeared beside Brian and cut off his right hand, then kicked him again on the chest with greater force this time, and Brian lost consciousness while he bled heavily. Klaus, who was viewing all of this from above, only shook his head. Then he appeared in front of Brian and told one of the students to take him to the healer's clinic. He turned to Anthony and said, "What's your name, student?" "No, Anthony," Anthony replied, while looking at Klaus as he wondered how far Klaus has really gone while mastering all weapons. "Oh, so you are that monster's son. he replied while touching his chin. Well, you don't need my class anymore. From the display, I could tell you were holding back. Your foundation is already solid. Even I wasn't as good with any weapon when I was your age. Even your father wasn't this good, he said with a deadly smile. As the first to graduate with such ridiculous display, I would award you points. The dean gave me 300,000 points to share, as I see fit within the span of 2 years. How about I give you 200,000? The rest were shocked as he said he was giving over 200,000 points. This was giving everything to Anthony. This was impossible. They would only be left with scraps. But they couldn't complain, as they are not brainless idiots. Klaus knew why he gave away such points. For him, who was a genius in his own class with mastery over all weapon, where even people who call themselves masters of a particular weapon dare not call themselves masters in his presence. People hardly impress him. Which is the reason the dean only gave him only 300,000 points, because the dean knew that Klaus won't even give anyone points at all, or would give the bare minimum that anyone could get from a mission. But if Klaus sees someone that impressed him, he would give away all points immediately. If not for these facts, the dean would have given more points to Klaus to give as a reward in class. Which is why the dean gave such small points to a class holding such number of students for a duration of 2 years. Thank you, Instructor Klaus, Anthony replied. Klaus nodded and said, Off you go. Anthony left as everyone stared at him as he left the place without hesitation. Tiara looked at him with a stern face. She clenched her fist until her nails punctured her palm, and she bled, which healed back immediately due to traits of a vampire. All vampires have great physical strength and regeneration. The higher the purity of their bloodline and higher their mana rank, the faster their regeneration and higher their strength. That is why people aim for their head or heart, as any other injury would simply regenerate with enough time, depending on the severity of the injury, and the regeneration doesn't cost mana. It's part of their innate trait. She was in turmoil because she knew that if she faced Anthony, she would lose. She thought she already saw the gap she needs to close during the 3rd round of the exam, but it seems he was holding back, and the instructor also said he was holding back even till now. Even though she has a good foundation in her sword training, she could also tell Brian has just as good of a foundation as her, but the physique of a dragon was no joke, as the physical differences could make her lose. Though her physical strength could match some dragon, but not people like Brian who were at the higher rank in the Dragon Clan. But she didn't believe she would lose against Brian in an all-out battle. I have a lot of weakness right now. I have to increase my training again. I hope I can cover all these during the training with Master, Tiara thought as she steeled her resolve to never be left behind again. This spar has truly shown her a lot. Right now, the only thing needed was to get to work as soon as possible.